You fell into a trap inside a dungeon and are losing a lot of blood. The hole is bigger than the hole of the OnlyFans girls. Everything started on Earth with a mass teleportation. And when they looked, several confused people were already in this new world. A cute rabbit appears, warning them that they were invited to a game. But obviously this was a game of life or death. You need to die to learn how to play, and now it's time to start. With only a few weapons given by the rabbit, monsters quickly emerged. The problem didn't stop there. Fights among humans began due to hunger, and the chubby ones didn't want to share anything. Our hero had gained a skill considered useless, and was therefore mistreated. His ability to purify impurities didn't help at all at that moment. This would be a night when the protagonist would sleep hungry. The next day, a giant ball was rolling behind several survivors. While they ran, some died stepping on traps along the way. Running from the ball trying to kill you without a rearview mirror was complicated. The boy who had slept with an empty stomach couldn't hold on much longer. And to top it off, he just stepped on a trap. Here we return to the point where the protagonist fell into the hole of the OnlyFans girls and the cursed rabbit was laughing at him. He still said that the chance of surviving this was 0. Even the other adventurers who wanted to help the boy had to leave him behind, alone in the big dark hole while ketchup gushed out. Sometime later they had completed the first phase and thought they could go home, but obviously there were several phases ahead. As a reward for completing phase 1, everyone received a full recovery. And this was no different for our protagonist in the hole who was still alive by a miracle. But even though he was alive and 100 recovered, apparently he was forgotten and left behind. Suddenly the system warns that the dungeon is resetting. The hole closes again. Our hero named Dayun throws a stone and triggers the trap. In seconds the rabbit appears, not understanding the situation. Why was this human still alive? Frustrated, he orders Dayun to call for his status so he can check. And it is possible to see that the boy's name no longer appears, meaning the dungeon has determined him as dead. Realizing that the boy is no longer a survivor, but a bug in this dungeon, the rabbit says he must follow the natural order and die slowly in that hole. But of course the protagonist is not going to give up like that and opens his inventory. He needs to survive no matter how. Initially he thought about digging and getting out the other side far from the monsters. However, that was a very hard job without the proper tools. His hands were already full of calluses. Exhausted from the situation and with plenty of time, he wonders if it's possible to store dirt in the inventory. And to everyone's surprise, it is indeed possible. Now with renewed enthusiasm, he digs even more intensely, looking like an excavator. Thanks to the system, he can even see how much he has already dug. Until a message appears saying that his first achievement was obtained and he gained a skill. His second skill was digging, and he could dig even faster if its level increased. The boy gets frustrated since he wanted a combat skill. How is he going to tell the others that he has a digging skill? Much later, the curious rabbit, wanting to know if the boy had already become worm food, decides to go down and look for him. Entering the boy's hole, he thinks the body must be nearby, but is surprised as the hole gets wider the further he goes in. And when he sees torches on the cave walls, he starts to panic. Suddenly, he finds the boy calmly whistling with a piece of meat in hand. The boy was not only alive and well fed, he had also made an underground house complete with a bed and dining table. By taking dirt from the inventory and mixing it with a bit of water, he turned it into clay and could mold it into whatever he wanted. The rabbit, still not understanding, questions what the guy is doing. Dayun says he will serve the guests, obviously. But the rabbit doesn't care about that and says that soon the boy will die alone. Suddenly everything starts to shake, and it seems that the new participants have just completed phase 1. That is, everything the protagonist just created will disappear, because the dungeon is resetting. He starts to run intensely to avoid being buried while the rabbit mocks him. But suddenly the shaking stops. Apparently the rules of the dungeon no longer apply to the digging boy. The rabbit, still very furious, tells him not to get relaxed because he will probably be buried in the next reset, or even encounter a scary monster underground. Noticing how furious the rabbit is, he questions if the creature can't kill him with its own hands. The rabbit is tied up, he can only eliminate players, and the boy is no longer a player according to the dungeon. Suddenly the wall breaks and a lot of water starts to flood the tunnels. The rabbit gets excited again. The boy is swept away by the current, but returning to the spot, he realizes he will only survive if he plugs the hole. So he starts pulling a lot of dirt from his inventory and covers the hole. But this doesn't last long and starts to leak again. Now forcing his ability, he takes a piece of dirt and shapes it into a brick. Even submerged, he is happy with the result. Shortly after, the rabbit can't stop being impressed. He made a dam using bricks and almost completely sealed off the water passage. Besides solving the initial problem, he also mocks the rabbit, saying he killed 2 birds with 1 stone and solved his water shortage issue. Now excited with his ability to shape dirt, he begins to modify the new well he just created. Soon a small wall and a lion's head were in the well as decoration, which even helped reduce the water pressure. The system starts to shine and he completed a new achievement. His reward was fish placed in the well, and now he has infinite food. Everything the boy does makes the rabbit more and more irritated. When night fell, he was even roasting the fish he caught in the well. The rabbit is already losing hope while thinking that his magnificent dungeon is being used to roast food. Dian, having a good heart, again offers food to the rabbit, and he even drools at the delicious smell of the food. But again furious, he refuses and starts a new argument. Minutes later, the boy had already eaten and was sleeping peacefully in his room that he created himself. The problem was that the smell of the barbecue rose to the surface, and the monsters sensed it. Tremors were felt throughout the cave. Suddenly a giant boar was in front of the boy, who was dreaming of eating pork. In the middle of his dream, he suddenly wakes up and punches the boar in the face because he was still dreaming. But upon truly waking up and looking to the side, he realizes there is a very furious boar staring at him. With nowhere to run, he will have to face the beast. Quickly using his ability to shape dirt, he creates a barrier in front of him to defend against the boar's first strike. Then he takes the opportunity to gain distance and creates a new barrier. This time it is more resistant. Even so, the creature breaks it with little effort. Furious that the boar just destroyed his room, he decides to use a new technique. A giant stone ball starts to come out of his inventory. The boy holds it with his hands but obviously can't throw it very far, so he has to run away from the beast again. As he runs, he starts to salivate thinking about the barbecue he could make with that boar. Then he raises another giant wall and at the same time makes a hole for the boar to get trapped. At that moment, the poor little creature already knew it was going to become barbecue. Our excavator boy would have a nice feast. Then he starts throwing various stones from his inventory to eliminate the pig. The rabbit is once again incredulous. How can the boy use such a useless ability this way? Only now does he realize how dangerous this boy is. The more time passes, the more furious he becomes with this bug in the dungeon. But now it's time to prepare the feast. In just a few minutes he had completely deboned the boar. Even the animal skull would be put to use, turning into a high-quality frying pan. This was much lighter and even had a handle to hold. The rabbit, seeing him store fat, warns that soon more monsters will come down due to all the smoke and smell. But this time Dayun will be prepared. He will use the same method they used at the beginning against him. As soon as the creatures fall, it's certain death. And it didn't take long for the first prey to appear. The rabbit even starts shouting for the creature not to jump. But it was already too late. A new delicious food just fell right in front of him. Could this be an infinite farm of meat? And it didn't stop there. Little by little more of them were attracted. Sensing the smell of the meat, they jumped thinking it would be easy food. But it would be easy food for the protagonist, who watched everything excitedly. Now that the meat and water were infinite, our once malnourished boy was starting to gain weight from eating so much. This is because every time the dungeon resets, new pigs fall from the sky. On the surface, one of the guys who left the protagonist behind but had also tried to help him earlier, had piled up dozens of pigs after slaughtering them. He even earned an achievement after killing 100 of them, and with it a skill that gave him the strength of a boar. The only problem was leaving all that meat behind. This is because there are toxins in these monsters which makes the meat inedible. Only at that moment did they realize how much dawn purification skill was missed. The boy who raised this question soon caught their attention. At first, everyone thought he was just a cook. But now they see how much the boy is missed since he was on the front lines solving everything. However, now it's too late. Dian had all the comfort in the world. It was even raining food in his room. The meat was literally infinite and that made no sense. Do the pig's brains reset along with the dungeon? And do they always fall into the same trap? Suddenly the rabbit gets startled. Dian was lifting the boar with his own arms. Obviously, this must be due to the boar strength skill since he is killing a boar every 5 minutes infinitely. However, when the dungeon resets the count too. So he is simply stronger now, but he knows he can earn this skill and get even stronger. Dian climbs out of the hole and comments that he should build some kind of entrance. When he gets to the top, he is startled to see the rabbit looking downcast and asks what happened. The guy, completely dumbfounded, asks if the skill the protagonist mentioned was from the Horned Boar Slayer achievement. Dian says yes, and the rabbit says it's impossible because you can only get it after killing 100 boars. The protagonist then explains that he caught the 100 boars with a trap. The rabbit says something is wrong because the dungeon has reset several times. Dian asks what that has to do with it. And the guy replies that when the dungeon resets, the count also resets and that there are only about 40 boars up there. The protagonist with a silly face comments that it seems his numbers stay the same even with the resets and asks if that wasn't supposed to happen. The little rabbit gets irritated and calls him a bug human while Dian wonders if all the monsters he kills will count. Thinking he might get another achievement when he kills 100 more, he reflects that it will be difficult to do that a group. The guy gets irritated and says the protagonist is starting to look like a pig now that he's eating them every day. Dian asks if there's a weight change system. The rabbit doesn't know. Meanwhile, outside it's a beautiful day. On a tree branch, a squirrel walks near a nest. He is gnawing on a bone until he accidentally drops it. Then he quickly descends from the tree. But when he gets down, he sees a hole in the ground near the tree. And he tenses up when he realizes his bone fell straight into that hole. He stares a bit before entering. After a while, he comes out of a small hole that leads directly into the protagonist's cave. He starts to explore, looking around. And when he gets to the kitchen, he is surprised to see all that. A little further ahead, he finds his bone and he runs to grab it. But he is surprised to see the carcass of a horned boar. It was love at first sight. Sometime later, he returns to the tree all excited with a twinkle in his eyes. More time pass and he returned to the hole, and this repeated day and night. Without the other squirrels knowing, it had become routine. He entered the cave all calm and there were always more bones there. So he ate them all until he saw something, a bowl full of bones. And he went straight to eat what was in it too. He picked up a bone from the bowl without hesitation. He was a little intrigued by it, but it only took one bite to feel a flavor explosion. And he was ecstatic. He soon started eating more and more amazed. He continued eating the bones from the bowl until he notices something. The bowl was on top of the protagonist. Then he is worried when he remembers the old squirrel teaching that humans are dangerous. And he starts to leave, afraid that the protagonist will get up and attack him. But the temptation of the bowl is too strong. He tries to resist. He makes a determined look, focused, but he goes back to eating the bones. Dawn, who was pretending to sleep, sees this and is happy. Then he celebrates that he found another living being after spending once living alone in that cave, and says it's good that the squirrel feeds on bones because he is very careful and didn't know how to approach him. While Dawn is being careful thinking about how to make friends, the squirrel realizes he is awake. The protagonist worries that he might run away, but the squirrel continues eating the bones. Dawn is moved by so much cuteness, so he slowly tries to pet him. The little squirrel notices and lets him. Dawn is all happy that it worked. And again a glow appears. The system shows the achievement of Earth's squirrel friend for having tamed the little squirrel, and then says the dungeon admires this unexpected friendship. Dawn wonders if they give these things out regularly and remembers that when he was with the group he couldn't get any. And he thinks about his new achievement and says he doesn't know if it's worth anything, but thanks the little squirrel for calling him a friend. Then he starts thinking about using Pakyu as the name of the little animal, since that's the sound it makes. The little squirrel seems to like the name. Dawn is astonished to see that Pakyu apparently understands him and wonders if it's the reward for the achievement. Then he tells the little squirrel to sit and even thinks that maybe it's hard for him to understand. But Pakyu sits down right after. He's impressed to see that the squirrel really understands him and even asks him to hold his hand. And then he asks Pakyu at that instant, the squirrel jumps from his hand. Dawn wonders if he didn't understand, but Pakyu waits for the protagonist, and then points in the direction indicating for Dawn to follow him. The protagonist then sees the wall through which Pakyu entered, and uses his digging ability to enlarge the hole. As he climbs through the tunnel, he wonders if the squirrel noticed that entrance because it's smaller. Then he remembers that every time he tried to dig an exit, he ended up facing stone walls. Dawn dug several tunnels looking for an exit and was almost giving up. However, he is surprised when he notices something. It is already possible to see a tree root where Pakyu entered. Then Dawn gets emotional to see that you will finally be able to get out, and soon celebrates saying that you will finally be able to have some hope. He knows that if he climbs the roots, he will be able to get outside. As he continues climbing, the protagonist is excited because he will finally be able to end this life under the earth. He can already see the sunlight, so he keeps climbing. After so much time, he finally can see the outside world again, with birds singing in the sky and the soft grass on the ground. Dawn can't contain himself with that view and starts to cry with emotion for finally being able to see the sky full of clouds and grass that seems endless. He says it's just a normal landscape with some sheep, but it seems so different. While he says it's welcoming and friendly, his speech is interrupted when he sees one of the little sheep suddenly attacked by a fierce wolf. Dawn gets nervous and says that survival of the fittest is also part of nature while there are several predatory looks in the forest. As the other wolves start to gnaw, the gizmo feel of being alive didn't need to be so realistic. The protagonist starts to sweat coldly and turns pale because he knows that packs of wolves are known for having no mercy and then thinks it's unfair to die right after escaping. The wolves start to growl and go on the attack. Dawn already prepares for the worst. Then he crouches, but the wolves pass straight by. He doesn't understand, and he is relieved because the wolves were focused on the sheep and didn't see him. He asks if Pakyu knows another way because that place doesn't seem safe. But right behind him, another wolf appears. Dawn tries to stay calm, thinking that this one's attention is also on the sheep, but the wolf has its eye on the protagonist now. Dawn runs back through the hole, yelling at the wolf and calling it an idiot. The protagonist says the entrance is too tight for the monster to enter, but it didn't take long for the wolf to break everything and manage to enter. At that moment, despair hits Dawn, who keeps running and apologizing for calling the monster an idiot. He realizes the tunnels are too narrow and there's no escape. Then Dawn opens the inventory and decides that since it's just one wolf, he will finish it off. And he starts to build a wall, thinking that compared to the boar of the wolf it's much weaker. But before he could finish his thought, the wolf leaps and attacks him, which draws blood from Dawn. He can't believe it. The wolf is extremely fast. Dawn realizes his situation is bad. The wolf missed that blow but will attack again. The protagonist wonders if he will be able to escape or if there's another way. And then he realizes he won't be able to run for long and then he has to end this. Then an idea comes to his mind. He says he still has that and there's nothing more he can do. The wolf leaps to attack him again. Dawn says it's him or the monster while the blue aura begins to emanate. Then he lands a powerful punch on the wolf after activating the strength of the horned boar. The monster is thrown far away with Dawn's punch. Is he impressed and wonders if he hit? He realizes the effect that the skill is incredible. The system shows that his physical attributes will be temporarily doubled. Then Dawn confirms that now that he tried to fight, he knows his skill is indeed incredible. But the wolf gets up angry. The protagonist knows he managed to damage the monster. But he is sad it wasn't a one-hit kill. The system shows there are 7 seconds left of the skill and Dawn thinks to himself that the duration is his biggest weakness. And then with 6 seconds left, he has no time to waste and charges with everything. Cowwolf prepares for the attack but Dawn is faster and manages to jump and dodge to the side of the monster. Before the wolf could react, the protagonist lands another powerful punch on the wolf's ribs. And with a determined look, he hopes the monster dies. Dawn continues to deliver a barrage of punches. So many punches that dust rises even from the outside. The protagonist is already tired and the system shows there are still 3 seconds left. But the wolf is still standing again. It charges. But Dawn manages to dodge with Ali, then he quickly opens the inventory, pulls one of the spikes while there are 2 seconds left, and yells for the wolf to die already as he prepares to attack with the spike. The monster growls at him, but Dawn manages to hit the spike on the wolf. But the monster attacks him at its tail. This attack ends up throwing the protagonist against the wall. He aimed the spike embedded in its neck. The wolf is still alive. While Dawn wonders how this damn thing has so much energy, and says this won't end easily, the system shows that the strength of the boar is on a cooldown of 99 seconds. The wolf stares at him angrily, but Dawn has understood the pattern of a monster. Its most dangerous attack is when it leaps to slash using its front claws. But after that, this attack is on cooldown. The protagonist asks that they can't have a truce for just 90 seconds. But the wolf launches another attack as Dawn prepares to launch his last attack. The monster is about to bite him. At that moment, the protagonist says he should have used his paw. Then, before the wolf could bite him, Dawn uses the digging ability right into the wolf's mouth, and the monster is caught by surprise. Sometime later in the cave, the guide appears, wondering what happened since the protagonist isn't making meat. He says something is wrong and says that Dawn must be doing something bad until he finds him. The rabbit can't believe that the protagonist is dressed in bone armor. Dawn says the armor turned out quite good for something made in a day. He says he made it because many dangerous things happen these days. The guide is shocked to see the skull of a plains wolf and wonders if Dawn finally found a way up there. The protagonist says yes, and the rabbit already asks why he is still there. Then he says it must be because that place is comfortable and tells Dawn to keep living there. Then he comments that the protagonist even got a little pet. But Dawn, determined, says he will leave. However, he cannot leave without preparing, as he only survived by pure luck. Because of the danger, the rabbit tells him to stay there. Then Dawn says he still plans to use the base for a while. Now that the problems are clear, he needs to start making his preparations. The rabbit asks Dawn to just give up and die, but ends up leaving the protagonist in a good mood, and the rabbit calls him a curse bug. Sometime later, Dawn is training with the strength of the boar, lifting weights and running, while thinking to himself that the more he increases his physical stats, the stronger the skill's increase will be. Since he is using the skill a lot, the system shows that its level has increased and even the duration and cooldown have improved. Dawn reflects that he was lucky last time, but wolves move in packs. And even if he tries to face them one by one, there are no guarantees that it will work. He uses a slaughtered boar as a punching bag while thinking that he has to get stronger. The system shows that the strength of the boar has risen to level 3, making the physical stats stronger, the duration longer, and the cooldown shorter again. Then he activates the skill and delivers a series of punches to the boar. Dawn lands a powerful punch with a determined look. He says he will no longer run away. In the forests, some wolves are quite carefree until they notice something coming their way. Suddenly, Dawn jumps out of the bushes. He is happy to find only 2 wolves. Then the protagonist activates the strength of the boar and throws a thorn at one of them. The other manages to dodge and already advances towards Dawn. He then says he will show the result of his training and lands a punch that makes the monster fly and hit a tree. The impact was so strong that it destroyed the tree. Right behind a protagonist appears the first wolf about to bite him. But he has already noticed and says he knew it wouldn't die with just one hit. Then he lands another punch on the wolf and says he will hit it as many times as necessary. While the monster is thrown to the ground, the second wolf gets up. During the fight, the guide realizes that he has become very strong. And Dawn himself feels full of power and wonders if this feeling means he is strong. He then says he feels he won't lose and wonders if he has become unbelievably strong. But the rabbit cuts his wave and says he's not that much since Dawn could kill 10 wolves in a second. Dawn says anyone is weak compared to Xiuyuan, but the rabbit says the boy Jian Dugu killed 3 wolves alone. Suddenly, one of the wolves starts to howl and the rabbit mocks the protagonist, saying that now the pack is coming. He warns that about 3 wolves are coming and that Dawn is lucky, because usually there are more than 5. Then he asks if the protagonist will be able to defeat them all before the skills time runs out and asks him to show his power. Dawn then asks if the guide knows what the best part of his skill is. Then he says it's the increase in physical staff that is now 2/4x, which means he can run away 24x faster than normal. The guide is incredulous and asks if he's really going to run away. Then he asks if the protagonist doesn't have the honor to face them. But Dawn says he only cares about something called life. Right after that, he jumps back into the cave hole. The rabbit says that usually players get obsessed and fight so much that they end up dying. Then he gets angry and tells the wolves to attack that hole. But Dawn makes an earth wall and prevents them from entering. The monsters even try to dig, but it doesn't work. Leaving the guide trembling with rage, he yells, calling the protagonist a damned bug player, and swears that one day he will kill him. Inside the cave, Dawn says he managed to find some isolated wolves thanks to Kevin But now that they are in a pack, it's not easy to deal with, and then wonders what to do. He made 7 escape routes in the area where there are no stone walls and now knows he can withstand fighting more than 2 wolves. But he is worried that something unexpected will happen like last time and he won't be able to close the entrance in time. Even if he flees to the hole, there's nowhere he can hide. So he tells Pakaview that he has no choice but to need his help. Dawn asks his little squirrel to find the wolves that have separated from the pack and tells him not to get too close and to be careful. Then he says he will start the preparations. Outside there are 3 wolves that have just hunted a sheep. Dawn is going to put his plan to practice and says the distance is perfect. Then he opens the inventory. Meanwhile, the guide is watching, asking if he is some kind of mole for having made so many holes in the region. The protagonist says the rabbit has this horrible habit of appearing behind people. The guide then grumbles and says the most important thing is to know what Dawn is going to do and asks if he is going to shoot a laser beam or something like that. Then the protagonist says it's almost that and says this is his long-range combat art. The rabbit says he doesn't have any such skill, but Dawn says it's possible to throw earth balls using the strength of the boar. Then he activates the skill and throws a thorn as if it were a spear, saying this is the safety first attack. The wolves are far away and unconcerned, until the attack passes close but doesn't hit any of the monsters. The rabbit starts laughing and asks if Dawn didn't mean wolves' safety first. The protagonist throws another spear and misses again. Then the guide says it looks like it's going to end in hammerhand combat, and that's what they call lack of experience. The plains wolves have the highest agility in phase 1 and that distance is no problem for them. Dawn then says that despite this, they can't dodge in the air. So he throws the earth balls and says it's going as he planned. The guide asks if he really thinks this is going to work and says there's no point in trying to buy time with earth balls because they'll destroy them in an instant. But a ball hits the wolf right in the face. The guide is astonished and can't believe it. Dawn says the rabbit is underestimating the balls too much and that earth is heavier than he thinks. Then he says he used his dating ability to increase their density to the point of weighing 20 kilograms, and with the strength of the boar, he can throw them as if they were bowling balls. The guide is again shocked and can't believe those balls weigh 20 kilograms. In a few seconds, Dawn managed to knock down 2 wolves, only the last one remains. Then the rabbit comments that wolves hunt in groups and they have good teamwork. While Dawn has his back turned, a 3rd wolf weeps and attacks from behind when the guide thinks it was checkmate. However, he managed to defend himself from the attack by placing his arms in the way. But he was still thrown far away while the wolf waited to see what happened. Still recovering from the beast's charge, he didn't notice that the wolf was approaching to feast on him. And the rabbit celebrated because he wanted that annoying player to go to heaven soon. Hoping, the rabbit asked the wolf to attack him immediately and finish the guy off. The rabbit laughed at the scene as the good sad as he is. Dawn was now inside the wolf's jaws as the fierce attack continued. The rabbit watched everything from afar, hoping that things would go as he planned. However, something unexpected happened. The wolf felt its teeth breaking. The rabbit, observing the scene, expected anything but that. Dawn's armor was more resistant than the beast's teeth and caused them to break when biting him. Taking advantage of the distraction, he managed to move his arms enough to free himself a bit from that dangerous mouth. He was finally in a safer position while the wolf tried to recover from the damage inflicted on itself. Dawn was pleased with the effectiveness of that armor. And if it weren't for it, he would have become a snack. The horned boars are the most powerful beasts of that level. The wolf's fangs are nothing compared to those bones. Even so, the force was felt by the guy's body and he suffered moderate damage. The status window signaled that he still had 8 seconds to use the boar's ability. At that moment, he tried to regain his calm to plan an attack. The time was more than enough and he started manipulating something in his hands. Dawn, with the earth's fear, assumed a posture to throw it at the wolf. Finally, he was prepared to do it with the wolf in his sights. Dawn threw the projectile towards the injured wolf. A great explosion occurred in the forest. The rabbit, still watching, didn't like the way things had turned out. He then asked if the guy had finished off a wolf that lay in front of him. Definitely, this was not the result desired by the rabbit, who wanted the player in the wolf's place. Dawn's strategy was to use a chain of tunnels, attack stray wolves, and then flee. That strategy is definitely efficient, but at a certain point, they began to be vigilant with the tunnels. They just didn't expect to be watched by the squirrel, who promptly relayed the information to his friend. Using it, he took the opportunity to train when an attack became too risky. Betraying caused his skill to level up more and more until the wolves were no longer able to resist. The forest apparently was at peace, but within it, Dawn was controlling the wolf population. The rabbit couldn't believe that human was still alive. The anger he felt for him only grew, as did the desire to resolve the situation himself. And he said the guy was a coward for the way he attacked them. But his armor was already almost completely destroyed and it was necessary to keep him safe. He decided to discard it and might make another one in the future, who knows. Dawn noticed that the day was very calm, and they should have already arrived because of the howls. For he knew he hadn't finished off all the wolves in the forest. The rabbit was completely unable to hide his annoyance, and Dawn asked what was wrong with him. Then he happily asked that he had finished off all the wolves. The rabbit said he was a coward and would soon die while he celebrated being able to deal with all the wolves. And he also said that if he found other players, he should tell them where they were, but the rabbit wished he would perish and said he wouldn't do that. Dawn celebrated the success of his strategy and was now ready to move on to the next step. He needed to defeat the boss but knew he couldn't do it alone. So he needed to find more players and join them. Now he was in the plains forest with 10 days left until the reset. He imagined they would soon pass through there. But he recognized that it would be problematic if they were far away. A loud sound echoed through the forest. In the middle of it, there was a small clearing. In that clearing, a group of players was confronting a pack of wolves. They knew the wolves were fierce, and on that occasion, there were many of them. One of the players blamed the situation on his colleague and they argued. The rabbit passed by there completely downcast. He looked at the group of players and realized they were having the expected tense behavior. To him, that was what was missing in the dungeon, more tension. The wolves advanced towards the people. The rabbit rejoiced in the scene and hoped the pack would take care of everyone. He wanted no player to remain so that Dawn would have no hope of getting out of there or living for long. One of the wolves is thrown far away. A player with an axe is responsible for it, and it was just as the rabbit imagined. Not everyone is weak. He noticed that the old man was hiding ability for emergency situations. Wind blade: the stronger the weapon is swung, the more damage it inflicts. However, this is an ability that can also hit allies. The players asked him to restrain himself as he could hit them too, but the old man ignores them. Either he does that or everyone becomes a snack. Only the strongest survive. The rabbit loved it. This was the spirit of the dungeon. The most cruel monsters are always the humans. The rabbit hopes that the reckless one ends up killing all his allies, because if everyone dies, Dawn will be left alone. But the guy is planning his life, thinking he should go to a higher place. Dawn is happy to have gotten out, but doesn't know what to do now, and the rabbit will take him to them. He asks Paku if he can imagine where the others might be. He wants to know where the humans are, and the squirrel becomes thoughtful. But he gave up insisting because he knows his friend doesn't know everything. He can't search because it might put him in danger, but he also can't face the boss alone. He thinks about building something to help him find them, like an observatory. It's a waste to think too much and not execute, and he is confident in his building skills. And for that, hell need to get above the tree canopy. So he started summoning earth bricks. The walls will be made of earth, and it will be easier to do since he has experience with the material. It might collapse since there's no cement, but he learned a technique that could reduce this risk. He brings his hand close to the bricks. He can change the shape of the object with his hand and intends to fuse the bricks with his digging technique. It's not a stack of bricks but rather earth, and it won't collapse so easily. By the end of the day he managed to accomplish a lot and was quite tired. In about 10 hours, he completed the task. He looks up at the sky from where he stands and he contemplates the beauty of the forming twilight. Far away, blood flies through the sky. The rabbit roots for the conflict and says they'll need that food if they want to fight tomorrow. He is pleased that the players have adapted well to the game, and he comes across a type of person he doesn't like who's looting a body. He thinks that this player must have many items in his inventory. The guy doesn't know, and the rabbit introduces himself as the guide of all this. He said he hadn't spoken to him, but that construction wasn't there yesterday. It's the first time the rabbit sees something like this. He is upset, and only one person there could be capable of that. At the top of the tower, Devon is building something else. Tired. His hands are quite shaky, and he finally completes that small object. The rabbit appears beside him and asks what he is doing. He says that he scared him and that it's important and that the rabbit should be working. But he says Devon only does things that hinder his work. He said that Devon has a lot of free time and that now he stopped making tunnels and is making towers. Devon asks the rabbit how long he thinks it took him to make that tower. He said it only took 4 hours, and the rabbit didn't believe it. It was difficult at first, but it got easier with the skills he acquired through achievements. Just with that tower there were 2. The first was as an observatory. Everything he sees from there appears on his map. And he shows it to the rabbit. It's outdated in real time and even differentiates hostile monsters and players for neutral people. The rabbit doesn't believe it, and Dalen said he has already tested it. Devon wants to know what other achievement he obtained. He imagines he got it when he finished the 5th tower. A beam of light appeared. Builder's reward. A new building skill was granted to him. And the construction time was reduced by half. He said it helped him so much that he didn't even need to rest. With the skill, he builds so quickly that he can invest his time in interior decoration. He pointed to a place where he said he would put the bed. Much to the rabbit's displeasure, he imagines Dalen has completely lost his mind since he is getting so many achievements. If he finds other players, they could turn that into a giant park, and the rabbit doesn't want that to happen. He is too dangerous alone and will make sure he stays that way. Dalen asks if the rabbit is already leaving, and asks him where he can find more people because he hasn't found anyone yet. The next day, the players observe the tower that wasn't there the previous day. The rabbit appears near them and gives a sinister laugh. He tells them to follow him to the tower because he has a surprise for them. One of them says the rabbit is a liar and shouldn't be listened to. He must be leading them to a powerful monster. So they should change their path. The rabbit pretends to be innocent and says it took him a long time to prepare that. But they change their path, and the rabbit is happy to have fooled them. He continued doing this so Dalen wouldn't find other players, and allowed them to take the easier path just to buy time. Maybe this way Dalen would perish. Now the time has come to finish them all. Dalen analyzes tracks on the ground, but it's just a group of monsters. But something on the map catches his attention. There were many signals on the map. Now 10 signals appeared there suddenly. Then even more appeared, so many that he couldn't count them. Dalen is scared because he can't imagine what it could be. A monstrous rat is running, and with it, there's a horde of other rats. They are advancing through the forest without stopping, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. The trees tremble with their advance. If Dalen had taken any longer, he would be in trouble, and is glad to be near his tower. Every 4 weeks after the reset, the rats descend from the mountains, devouring everything in their path. Dalen had been counting the days for this but forgot for a brief moment. Another reset is on the way, and it's at this moment that he has an epiphany. If players don't appear on the map, it's because they've died or moved on to the next stage. He thinks he can stop looking for them now and head to the beginning. A squirrel tries to say something to him and makes a funny face. Dalen says they don't need to worry about the rats. They just need to pay attention to the map. A large gate stands before them. The players, despite the adversities, have managed to reach it. But they don't know how to defeat that enormous golem. Swords are useless against it. The golem prepares to attack them. The bald guy says he's going to take down the golem because he's very tough. He gets ready to strike the golem with his mace. The other players are stunned by the scene. The weapon was on the ground and there was a lot of tomato sauce. The monster advances unstoppably towards them. The player is terrified by this because he imagines there's nothing he can do against it. He asks for Bod's help. The golem is ready to finish him off. But something hits it from the side. The golem's hand fell. With that impact, the player gives thanks. But the woman tells him to look in the direction of the attack. A brick was flying through the sky. Dalen has arrived and is using the boar's strength to throw bricks. This golem is different from the map monsters. So it's possible that it's the boss. The player doesn't know why Dalen is so strong and the woman asks him to be careful. The golem continues attacking with his remaining hand. Dalen prepares to throw another brick. This time it hits the side of the monster's head. A large hole was formed. Now it turns towards Dalen. The golem is enraged by this trick. Dalen realizes that it might be better to run now. The golem is fast and is already very close to him. Dalen doesn't know what to do now, and he remembered when they defeated the boar. They stretched a rope across his path, causing the beast to fall. And so they managed to strike its vulnerable belly. Dalen said that it was very well planned. Sung said it was nothing and uttered a cliché phrase. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. Dalen throws another brick at the golem. This one hits its leg at knee height. Dalen waits for the impact's result. The other players watch. Gary surprised. The golem began to fall to the ground. Dalen is pleased with the result and thanks Sung for the advice. The golem tries to get up after the fall. It doesn't move and must be trying to regenerate its missing leg. But that didn't matter because now Dalen had plenty of time to finish off that immobile monster. Then he throws another brick at it, but nothing happens. The brick falls to the ground and the golem remains intact. A window appears for Dalen, startling him. The boar's strength is on cooldown and will take 70 seconds until it can be used again. The golem is now fully regenerated and ready to finish off the players. It attacks Dalen, who manages to dodge. He fell nearby and prepares to react. Dalen arms himself with an earth brick in his hand. He threw it at the golem, but nothing happened. The golem, enraged, brings his arms together. He doesn't understand what it's doing. The monster begins to concentrate its strength and prepares to strike the ground with all his might. He slams the ground, causing the earth to tremble. The other players are terrified and wonder what happened to the guy. But Wonin still holds out hope that nothing has happened and thinks they shouldn't just stand there watching. Her companion is too scared to think of anything. There's not much that can be done against that thing. The woman runs toward the golem. The guy yells, asking what she's going to do. Davin knows he just needs a little more time. And something hits the golem's face from a distance. The woman is there now, protecting him. She wants to know what she can do to help him defeat that thing. Davin says he just needs 1 more minute, nothing more. That's too much time, and she wants to know if 10 seconds will do. But Dalen can't do anything about the time and warns her of the imminent danger. The golem is about to strike her now. He executes his strike without mercy. Dalen closes her eyes, fearing the worst. Feeling as she's still alive, she opens her eyes cautiously. The other players are there now, helping them. They are a team and wouldn't leave her alone, and they ask Dalen what to do. He tells them to attack the golem's chest. It's difficult to attack there, but he saw the golem protecting that area. There must be something there. They cling to the monster, and the woman goes to help them too. She launches a fireball in its direction, and it hits the chest directly. The armor was damaged and a light shone from that spot. The golem places its arms over its chest to protect itself. That was what Delo needed to see. The guy asks if it was only him who saw that. Now everyone is motivated and knows they need to attack the monster's chest. Davin checks his screen to see if he can use his ability yet. Meanwhile, the other players continue fighting the golem. The golem defends itself as best it can, and it's stronger than they imagined. Dalen notices that the monster seems to be made of earth. If it's made of earth, he has an advantage, and it finally dawns on him that it's made of clay. If that's the case, he should be able to control this monster. The golem opens its arms, throwing the players away. Dalen runs towards it. The woman asks if a minute has already passed. Dalen nods affirmatively to her. It's been a long time, he just didn't have enough information to attack. The golem regenerates, so it needed to be studied. And those people risked themselves so he could react. The time he gained allowed him to plan his attack. He's grateful to them for their effort. He crouches down as already using the boar's strength. He jumped towards the golem with it. The players watch Dalen in amazement. The woman also can't believe what she's seeing. Dalen is high up, heading towards the golem. He prepares one of his hands to attack and manages to pierce its chest, going right through it. He lures back as the beast loses its balance. The golem now collapses into a great pile of earth. Dalen is pleased that his strategy worked. The other players also celebrate. The woman is happy that everything worked out. Now his digging ability has reached level 9. The experience was so much that he also reached level 10. The boar's strength is now at level 5. The players go to him, cheering him on as they manage to defeat that beast. The rabbit is furious with their success. He burns with hatred for Dalen. The players begin to complain to the rabbit, who promised to send them home as soon as they defeated the boss. He's upset that Dalen's ability worked on the golem. He's deeply irritated by this. He says the game isn't over and that they have to go to the next stage soon. The woman asks what the next stage is. His umbrella begins to glow. A door opens and he tells the players to enter it quickly. They are disheartened because they didn't expect more stages. The woman is a little thoughtful about this and encourages her companions because there's nothing more to do there. One of them decides to pass through the portal right away. They thank Dalen and the rabbit hurries them along. The woman says Dalen was very brave. He thanks her and asks her to go ahead. They head to the portal for the next stage. Dalen prepares to go through as well. He waves goodbye to the rabbit, who is seething with rage. But as soon as he tries to pass, he is immediately barred. The system blocked him, apparently for no reason. He tells the rabbit to fix it quickly, but the rabbit says the system rejected him. Dalen has no idea what to do now, and the rabbit is thinking the exact same thing. A week after reset has passed. Dalen's clothes are spread out on the floor of the cave. There are also several bones scattered around the area. The guy is lying down staring at the ceiling. He's bored and says he can't keep living like this. He goes to the water source to drink a little. After washing his face, he starts thinking a bit more. The squirrel stayed with him and the base was at reset. But the towers he had built disappeared after the reset. The surface resets while the underground remains intact. He wonders if this part is considered part of the dungeon or not. Then he notices something. The system's creator only placed him in a place that already existed. So he can go anywhere as long as it's not through the system. South and west are deserts, to the north are the ruins, and to the east is the mountain of rats. He doesn't have enough food to cross the desert. All that's left is the mountain of rats, and maybe he can pass through it if he goes underground. He is pleased with his idea and decides to give it a try. He's now to the east in the forest. He hit a wolf on the head with a stick. Around him, some wolves are writhing from the blows. Another one tries to attack him by surprise. But he manages to dodge just in time. Opening his screen, he attacks it. He summoned an earth block over it, crushing it. The wolves keep coming and the boar's strength is on cooldown. It was time he used his other abilities. He builds a small tower that places him above the wolves. Davin is quite happy with this distance now. He can't be attacked there but can attack the wolves. The rabbit is upset because Davin is getting stronger and stronger. He descends, boasting, and the wolves are down now. And he tells the rabbit that he's heading for the mountain, and the rabbit can't believe it. He looks at the rabbit suspiciously. Judging by the rabbit's reaction, there must be something about that mountain. The rabbit tries to convince him not to go, but the guy ignores him. The rabbit says that was his home, but the guy says they never like each other anyway. The rabbit says that without Dawn, he will die of loneliness. Seeing footprints on the ground, he imagines he's already close to the mountain. Quickly, he builds a tower with underground access, much to the rabbit's dismay. With a map that appears with a tower, he'll be able to plan his advance carefully. This way he can get close to the mountain quickly, avoiding dangers. The rats that appear along the way were properly dealt with. And if he encountered a group too large, he would just go underground. And since the map was essential for his safety, he built several watchtowers. He was almost done building his fourth tower. It's at this moment that a system notification appears. Players cannot leave the territory of the first phase. Dallin didn't expect this to happen. The rabbit says that if he goes beyond that point, he'll find out if there's bread in heaven. That was the end of the world. Dallin is amazed that the rabbit doesn't get tired. And he asked the rabbit what was beyond that point. Not even the rabbit knows, so he decided to ignore him. Something else catches his attention now. This was apparently more serious. In front of his foot, there was a line of energy. And the color of the ground ahead is different. The rabbit says that this is the territory of the rats, and that he wouldn't be able to pass through there. But he had already crossed it, and the rabbit gets angry. A system screen warns him of this. The rabbit, incredulous, orders him to return. Dallin continues walking. Ignoring him, the rabbit keeps yelling about success. And the guy taunts him, saying that if he doesn't like it, he should come and get him. The rabbit is furious but can't do anything. Dallin observes him impatiently. The rabbit is right at the edge. And the guy teases him, asking if he's unable to cross it. The rabbit is sweating cold of fear and says that's not it and that he's not scared. Dallin taunts him a bit more, and the rabbit says he doesn't like the color of that place. He was right, the guy can't go there, and this world was divided into phases. It's possible that the reset doesn't work in that area. He wanted to confirm this, and the rabbit decides to run away. The guy would like to ask a few questions, but prefers the rabbit far away anyway. He has 2 weeks until the reset and will build some towers until then. If nothing resets, his life will become much easier, and he'll be able to reach the other side quickly. If everything goes as he suspects, he'll be able to leave that dungeon forever. He built a tower and is working on the second one. He worked for 3 hours and is now hungry. He's checking what items he has in his inventory. Something on the list caught his attention there. It was the golem core that he hadn't even noticed he had received. He imagines that with that core, he could make his own golem. He's at the base of the mountain now because he's worried it might attract puny monsters on the surface. The tunnel isn't very tall, so he thinks about making the golem differently. It doesn't need to have a human appearance, and if it's quadrupedal, it will move more easily. He's thinking of making an elephant now. He draws the design on the ground and prepares to create it. He summons some blocks of earth, and with his hands, he begins to shape the golem. The squirrel gives his hard-working friend a discreet pat, and Dayan pats him back. With a final touch, the golem is finished. Dayan is pleased with what he's made, but as soon as he's done, the sand elephant collapses. He thought the belly gave way due to a lack of structure. He decides to make it slimmer even if it looks strange. An hour later, it's completed and he's very tired. It now has 2 extra legs and an empty space that can be used to carry things. A spider elephant golem is ready. He climbs onto the golem's back and prepares to implant the core into it. He places it inside its forehead. He gets down from the golem afterward and positions himself in front of it, waiting for any reaction. After some time, nothing happens. Dayan wonders what could have gone wrong. Then the golem's eyes begin to glow intensely. The elephant rises and makes a loud noise. He earned another achievement. Golem builder, it will follow and obey him. The guy is quite pleased with his golem now, and he thinks about giving it its first order. He commands it to sit like a dog. The golem lowers itself as best it can to obey the command, much to Dayan's delight. Then he climbs up his trunk, him on top of his head. He exclaims how incredible this is. He commands the creature stand up again. Obeying every command is going to be very useful. Now Dayan becomes a little pensive. The squirrel wants to know what that was all about. And the guy says they need to go somewhere. The golem is ready to obey. And Dayan says his golem needs a brother now. The rabbit is in front of the players, wishing them luck in their fight. Ant's the boss. They still have doubts about whether they'll be able to return home after this. A strong light blinds them momentarily. They open their eyes to see what's there. And there's nothing, just a massive destroyed earth. The rabbit can't believe what he's seeing. Then he remembers Dayan. He's furious and the players ask if they can go home now. The guy flees with his golem. The tunnel he made with his ability leads him from the mountain to the ruins. Took a week of work, but it was worth every drop of sweat. He can't wait to get back to his base. He finally arrives at the Mountain of Death. Took him 2 hours to return, a very reasonable time. He opens his system screen to view the item. He's thinking about what kind of golem to make this time. He's considering making one for combat, a bite with sturdy arms. He already knows what he's going to do. Time passes and the day is breaking. He should have made the elephant this way. It wouldn't have collapsed after being completed. He extends the core to his construction and he names it the Fierce Gorilla. The gorilla's eyes begin to glow intensely. He shouts with excitement. It worked. He gives it a few commands and tells it to be cautious with the ceiling. Afterward, he introduces one golem to the other. The squirrel is very happy and Dayan says he's the oldest one here, and he wants to see how strong they both are. Outside the tower, many rats are moving around. Some of them start to notice something happening. A noise is coming from the entrance of the tower. Soon the golems emerge with Dayan. The rats immediately become enraged. They charge at the golems and Dayan gives a simple order. Attack! The gorilla leaps towards the rats. It raises its powerful arms, striking the ground with great force. The rats are stunned and the rest try to attack. But the gorilla sweeps them away as if they were nothing. And it continues like this, practically unstoppable. The guy watches the strength of the level 1 boss in awe. The gorilla continues pounding the rats with its fists. Instead of decreasing, the rats keep coming in greater numbers. And some of them are already climbing onto the elephant. He orders the elephant to react and prevent the rats from climbing. It begins to stomp the ground violently, but the rats are too many and are starting to surround them. The guy realizes he needs to attack in a different way, and he thinks about attacking on a larger scale. Then he has another epiphany about how to defend himself. He tosses an item to the gorilla. The gorilla grabs a large block of sand in one of its hands. Dayan orders it to throw it. The gorilla prepares to launch the object. It flies far and high into the sky. The block crashes violently among the rats. Dayan is pleased with the result and asks the elephant to move closer to the gorilla. Then the guy climbs onto the other golem. Now he asks the gorilla to extend its hand. This way he can place the cues quickly and orders the golem to continue attacking the rats. And so it does, using the cues. Each throw crushes several rats. Dayan keeps applying cues to his golem, which hurls them at the rats. Though it's an interesting solution, he had an even better idea. With the elephant close to them, he took advantage of its empty space to fill it with blocks. Now the gorilla's attack was even faster. Quickly, most of the rats had been dealt with. A message appears on his screen, warning that the dungeon is about to reset. Dayan wasn't expecting the dungeon to reset. The ground starts to tremble as soon as the message appears. The rats begin to screech as if something is happening to them. They flee as if they'd gone mad, sparking the guy's curiosity because they seem afraid of something. The little squirrel also seems scared of something and Dayan tries to console his friend. The squirrel tries to tell him something about the approaching danger. He knows that during the last reset, his little friend wasn't scared. But this time it's different. He opens his minimap to see if he can find anything that might explain this unexpected reaction. At first, there's nothing unusual happening. But the area surrounding the first phase is starting to darken. And the towers there have begun to disappear. Even though everything is vanishing, the area still appears to be safe. However, something in particular catches the guy's attention. Several points appeared around the border. They seem to be monsters. Dayan calls his golems. They need to leave that place now. He orders the elephant to go underground and the gorilla to climb the tower. Now he and the gorilla are up high observing the surroundings. The earlier tremor was an earthquake, to his relief. That sound was much easier to explain. It was the sound of all the monsters from the first phase moving underground. Dayan can't let this opportunity slip by. This is the perfect chance for him to refine his abilities. And he starts using the boar's strength. After doing so, he also summons some earth cues, and ordered the gorilla to throw the cues at the monsters. It would be his bazooka. All he had to do was create a block that the gorilla could lift with its ability. And the two of them start hurling the blocks from the top of the tower. A little rat looks up suspiciously. A massive block of earth is descending from the sky toward the monsters. They fall like meteors, and there's nothing the rodents can do to avoid them. The goal wasn't to eliminate the monsters, but to refine Dayan's ability. Because of the ability's cooldown, it wasn't easy to level it up like the digging ability. This time it was different because he could use it for an extended period in a safe place. A golden opportunity. The rats writhe in agony as the boulders rain down on their heads. They gather in one spot, trying to form a living tower. It grows rapidly, reaching towards the tower the boy had built. And he realized what they were doing and that it would be very difficult to hit them now. As it might damage his structure, however, there's no other option but to bring them down. Turning to the little squirrel, he says he's going to nip that problem in the bud. Striking the living tower at a critical point. The rats begin to lose their balance and their tower becomes unstable. The rats fall to the ground, defeated by Dayan's stones. Focused on finishing what he started, he concentrates even more. Preparing to use his digging ability, he uses it to create a large object in front of him. He'll continue repeating his pattern as long as he can. He prepares his hand to use more of his ability. In front of him now is a block decorated with numerous spikes. He says the gorilla can do its job with that. The beast lifts the spike block with its immense strength. And using its power, it hurls it toward the monsters below. The spiked hue spins rapidly in the air. Its fall was intense, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. A large trench was created by the impact, clearing the rats that were in the block's path. Dayan is amazed that this idea was so effective. The light discreetly appears in front of him. The system informs him that he has finally mastered the digging ability. He never imagined there would be a level beyond 10, and the boar's strength is now at level 7. From atop of his tower, he concludes that all of this has been very productive. He wants to leave the tower and tells his little squirrel that they're heading back to the base. Night is approaching in this barren land. Now that everything is quiet, he wonders if all monsters have really left that place. Looking at the map, he guesses they've hidden in the caves. There must be many nests, given the number of rats, and the upper part of the map will become dangerous. He knows that it was difficult because they were stationary, and if a large group wanted to attack them, there would be little to be done. However, he is motivated by his results and wants to keep digging. This has become much easier now that he has a master level in this ability. With little effort, he can create enormous tunnels. Using his ability underground, he encountered something unusual. The tunnel met a rock formation different from the usual pattern. The stone was too dense, and no matter what he tried, he couldn't get through it using his digging ability. Without a solution in sight, he decided to return to the surface. The air is a bit chilly. He imagines this is due to the area being open and without trees. Walking in that area would be dangerous with the rats. He needs to think of a path that won't leave him so exposed to the monsters. Even if he can't dig, he could still erect towers. But with the underground block, there's little to be done. Especially if he ends up facing another giant horde of rats. Things could get dangerous. He realizes that having more golems might be useful. And now that the dungeon has reset, he can get another one and ask the gorilla to accompany him. He's on the mountain in one of the towers he had built. He's already giving orders to gorilla number 2, which has just been created. That's his second combat golem. While the gorilla fought against the boss, it was easy to get the unprotected core. And once he has more golems, he won't even need to interfere in combat. And with his digging ability at the master level, things have become more practical. This way he can train his boar strength ability, because he's able to produce larger and consequently heavier blocks. With their weight, most monsters won't be a problem at all. However, it's possible that a more dangerous monster exists, so caution is still necessary. Being careful, all he needs to do is plan, especially now that he has 3 golems with him. After a lot of digging, he decided to return to the surface. Once there, he began shivering from the cold almost instantly. The cold was so intense that he even sneezed as if he was already catching a cold. And since he's on the mountain, the altitude makes the place colder than the surroundings. Opening his inventory to search for items, he pulled out the horned boar's hide and used it as a blanket to shield himself from the cold wind. The low squirrel was there with him, bumbling up. The coziest was so much that it put his little friend to sleep. The scene was cute enough to bring him joy. After a while, he asked the golems to stop marching. And once they stopped moving, there wasn't as much wind to make him feel cold. Dolan imagines that if he made a roof on the elephant, it could solve his problem with the excessive cold wind. And decided to put his idea into practice. Climbing down, he ordered the gorillas to secure the perimeter. He started handling the clay to shape what he wanted to create. Then he used his digging ability, but something unexpected began to happen in front of him. Making something thin like that was impossible before, but now that he's at a master level in this ability, he managed it. It was not only thin but also extremely smooth. Not even resembling ceramic. Pressing it with his fingertip, the piece broke because it had become too thin, compromising its hardness. Analyzing the piece, he realizes the edges need to be thicker to prevent it from breaking. Even so, he could make a piece that was strong enough. After many attempts, he finally managed to create a result that wasn't excessively thin. Now with the piece thicker, he wonders if it would be a problem if it fell. He spends a few moments deep in thought, imagining what might happen. It was then that his thoughts led him to a conclusion. He should shape the piece as an arched dome. This way it would resist its own weight and provide better protection. Now he was hunched over it, thinking about where he could improve it. With the piece ready, he asked one of the gorillas to carefully place the object on the elephant. Now the elephant had a well-crafted roof capable of protecting its occupants from the elements. Dolan lies down on it calmly, pleased with what he had accomplished. The little squirrel appears and says something to him now. The guy thinks he can better use his skills and perhaps build a wall to prevent monsters from passing. Now that he can't hide underground, raising a wall would protect them during surface travels. Since it was very cold, he thought of first making an insulating wall. And now that daving was at its maximum level, he could create even more elaborate things. He could replicate things he had in his life in Korea. And after much work, he created something that hadn't existed in that dungeon until then. A campfire similar to an oven had been built. The elephant golem now had a chimney and could produce heat. There was a space for burning wood, a bathroom, a storage area, and a well-designed steam passage through the golem's trunk. The work was so well executed that the little squirrel was extremely impressed by it. Another achievement was unlocked for creating a heating system, and a heat manipulation skill was added to the craftsman skill. He hadn't expected a reward for that, and he wasn't even surprised. 2 lone ones passed, and they were now in historical ruins. The rabbit is incredulous at what he observes. Once again, the golem had been destroyed, and the players want to know what to do now. This is definitely not good. Dalvin continues to collect the item from the level 1 boss. If things keep going this way, his superiors will start to complain. At his base, the guy just laments a little that he can't show what he's made to anyone else. If the rabbit were there, he would show him his entire army of golems, which now numbers 5. The group of golems advances up the mountain. The guy is inside the mobile home and his elephant has become. Through the window, he doesn't see any rats and assumes it's because they're now high on the mountain. If they continue at this pace and without any unforeseen events, they'll soon reach the top. He finally dismounted from his elephant and contemplating the horizon line. He was quite impressed with what he could see from there. The mountain range formed a beautiful landscape as seen from that spot. Perhaps that's why people enjoy hiking. The scenery is not only beautiful, but also takes you places with refreshing air. He looks back for a moment and something immediately catches his attention. In the distance, it's possible to see a fort and he doesn't know why that structure is there. Now he's wondering what that could be. As he gets closer, his doubts only grow about why the historical ruins are in that place. He was far from the location of the first phase and now he wants to know why it's called a historical ruin. Since it's the rabbit who calls it that, he doesn't know the reason but assumes it must have been built a long time ago. He wonders if it existed in that world before it became a giant dungeon. And if he stays there in front of it, he won't discover anything. So he decided to enter to investigate, and since he has 5 golems with him now, he doesn't need to worry as much. He climbs the stairs and looks at the gargoyle beside him. He hadn't seen that before and wonders what that statue is. The statue appears to be very well made with rich details. It was crafted from raw stone, however, the color was a bit strange. Even so, it's clear that it was very well made. He continues climbing the stairs, passing by the statue. As he ascends, the statue suddenly moves, a large explosion occurs and pieces of stone fly in all directions. The guy falls backward, worried because he doesn't know what just happened. The statue is now in front of him, holding a large trident in its hands and in a threatening posture. Dawan can't hide the panic on his face. The statue is enormous, and the flapping of its wings stirs up the dust in the area. It leaps into the sky, causing a strong gust of wind. The guy has no idea why it's alive. The gargoyle is high above, ready to attack anyone below. Dawan thinks he's in big trouble because there's little he can do against such a huge beast. The gargoyle swoops down fiercely towards the intruder of the ruin. Dawan desperately calls for his golems to do something. Before the gargoyle can reach him, two of the gorillas were already prepared to attack the aggressor. The statue strikes the first one with a blow from its trident. The blow is powerful enough to cause one of the gorilla's arms to snap like rotten wood. The gargoyle then turns to the other golem to try to attack it. Noticing more golems coming to attack, it leaps into the air again, avoiding being grabbed by them. Now it descends towards the one that had collided with each other. And with a swing of its powerful tail, another of the golems is damaged. The gargoyle lands on the ground while the gorilla succumbs to the damage it has taken. It stands tall with no damage to its body. Dawan is genuinely worried because this statue is much stronger than he expected. However, the golems, despite suffering extensive damage to their bodies, are already beginning to regenerate. Dawan realizes he needs to distract the creature and give the golems a chance to attack. He summons an earth cube, placing it on his elephant's trunk. He then orders the elephant to hurl the cube toward the statue. The boulder is launched with great force. The gargoyle notices the cube flying towards it and shields itself with one of its wings, blocking the attack. The dust from the cube begins to settle, revealing the condition of the statue's wing. Despite the impact, it hadn't suffered any damage. Dawan realizes that the strength of the earth he's throwing is nothing compared to the resistance of the stones the gargoyle is made of. And that's all he can do right now, nothing more. Thinking quickly, he uses his abilities once again. The elephant shoots another massive earth cube at the statue. Once again, the statue defends itself with one of its wings. He then orders his gorillas to attack the creature. The statue is grabbed by them, becoming immobilized. The stone dragon begins to writhe, and by spinning rapidly, it manages to break free from the gorilla's grasp, sending them flying. Dawan had hoped the gorillas would be able to hold it off for a bit. But at this rate, they'll turn to dust and he doesn't know what to do. The guy hears a faint voice. One of the gorillas stands up resolutely. He doesn't understand at first what is happening. The gorilla roars fiercely at the statue. It manages to grab it from behind, successfully immobilizing it. Dawan observes the cleverness of the fourth gorilla. Seeing what was happening in front of him, he orders the remaining golems to flee the area. They manage to escape while the last gorilla holds the gargoyle in place. This was far from ideal. The situation was merely catastrophic. They're now close to the summit of the northern mountain, and the gargoyle hasn't followed them there. It's a miracle that guy out there losing only one of his golems. And now he can only wonder what might be in that ruin. According to the map, that wasn't a monster. And since it's not in the phase area, it's not a boss either. He hadn't expected this to be in his path. That must be why the rats don't go there. There's definitely something behind all of this. Now Dawan needs to find out what it is, no matter what. Another month has passed in that place, and he remains on the mountain of death. Amidst the land of rocks and various boulders, the guy works tirelessly. But no matter how hard he tries, it seems impossible to make any progress. He's already frustrated because that stone is impossible to mine. The guy tries to calm down because he knows he can't lose his sanity in this place. A bit calmer, he looks at the ground. He observes the tool he was using to try to mine the stone, as he's planning his revenge against the gargoyle. And to understand the preparations he's been making, it's necessary to go back to the beginning. About a month ago, he was in the forest and found what seemed to be a large hammer. Someone might have abandoned that item there, a metal hammer, and he had only returned to that place to make more golems. What he learned from the battle is that earth golems are ineffective against beasts made of stone. He needed something that was tougher than stone, since his golems couldn't do it. And after thinking a lot about the subject, he decided to create weapons that the golems could use. Finding the hammer ended up being a fortunate discovery in that land. The mountain peaks decorate the horizon line. The hammer was too small for the golems to use as a weapon, but he had found a material that could be shaped into one. He opened his inventory to use some of the items he had. The hammer was more of a tool than a defensive weapon. Dalin's skill tree was entirely focused on creating objects and things. After working hard, he wondered if it would be good enough. He asked his little squirrel if making an axe was a good idea. What he managed to achieve was the recovery of the golem lost in the battle against the gargoyle. He had no experience with stone and spent an entire month working with this material. Refining his skills, the work was exhausting, and even though he had made 5 axes, he was very tired of having to mine the stone. He reeled in the hammer, but the progress in shaping the stone was slow and tedious. Even so, he kept working day after day, striking the stone once more. A glow erupted in front of him. Another achievement was unlocked due to his efforts. Now he had the stone carving ability. It was yet another thing he didn't expect to happen. The dungeon provided all kinds of skills, and that's how he acquired the digging ability after digging extensively. Now he just needed to figure out how to use this newly acquired skill. He imagined he needed to punch the stone, but doing so didn't achieve anything. So he grabbed the hammer in his hands and thought of using it to see if something different would happen. He spoke the name of the skill as he prepared to strike the boulder. A bluish glow emanated from the spot where the impact occurred. He observed the stone he was trying to break intently. After some time it cracked. He didn't need to hit very hard, and yet the cut was clean. Remembering the effort he had put in all those days trying to shape the stones, he recognized the value of this skill. He struck a few more stones to improve his affinity with the skill, continuing to understand how it worked. Looking at a larger stone, he wondered if he could break that one too. Now he was determined to try. The sound of the strike echoed through the place. The single blow wasn't enough, but he imagined that with more strikes, he could break it. Now he was thinking of making the axes with the help of this skill. It was much easier, and it took him only an hour to carve the axe. And now the time required to make them was much shorter. In total, he managed to make the 8 axes he wanted. And with the different shapes, he learned more about the characteristics of the material. He needed to strike with something harder than the stone. The heavier the tool, the easier the stone broke. He could also control the direction in which the stone would break. He wondered what would happen if he struck without the guide. Even though it would break, the impact would have no direction, and it would be slower and less efficient, just scattering unusable pieces on the ground. However, one of these pieces caught his attention. He decided to hit it with a hammer, and saw that there were even smaller pieces. He wanted to see how far he could break them down. He repeatedly struck the small pieces of stone. The stone had turned to powder, resembling more sand than stone. And in this state, he thought of testing his digging ability on it. Extending his hand towards the stone powder, he used his ability. A block began to fall in front of him. He was impressed by what was happening before his eyes. And looking at his inventory, he realized that it had worked. The material of the brick was the same as the stone, so it was very hard, almost as if it had turned back into stone. He needed to break more stones to make more bricks like that. He couldn't stop thinking about how this skill would be once it reached the maximum level. With a stick, he began drawing on the ground. He was planning a strategy against the gargoyle, which had the advantage in open spaces due to its ability to fly. Using the stone carving skill on it could be dangerous, so the boy kept thinking. He just needed a way to get close without putting himself at risk. He needed to dig a tunnel, and with the stone carving skill he might be able to. But it was possible that, at his current skill level, the time required would be impractical. He continued trying to think of a solution, and looked at the drawing of his golems on the ground. And finally, it seemed he had an interesting idea. The first golem was the elephant, but he made a gorilla right after. And he needed mobility to fight. What could help him now was a more agile golem. He began sketching shapes on the ground that could fulfill this objective. The little squirrel was impressed by the drawing. Dallin looks at his friend, wanting to say something. The boy tells his little buddy that they need to create his new siblings. The squirrel is very happy to see the family growing. At the entrance to the ruins, the gargoyle stands guard. It remains still but alert to its surroundings. It begins to move slowly as his eyes light up. Its hand grips the trident tightly. The boy is there for his revenge. And the gargoyle senses that there's an intruder. Golems are approaching, and they have the shape of centaurs. The form Dallin chose to achieve the agility he needed was that of centaurs. They advance. In formation behind them is Dallin riding on a clay ostrich. With his idea, he managed to create an entire cavalry. The bonus for having the digging skill at the maximum level allowed him to shape the earth with little effort. The older golems are intact, they just don't have their cores. The gargoyle takes to the air, preparing to attack those who are trying to enter the ruin. The boy says the lizard can cry all at once. And the first stone hits the flying gargoyle. It defends itself from the attack, but this time its wing cracks from the impact of the stone. Dallin notices something even more interesting. The wing remains cracked, a clear sign that it isn't regenerating. Perhaps it doesn't have a core, making it less dangerous. So he orders the centaurs to attack the beast. They advance carrying the stones carved by the boy. The gargoyle descends to attack, heading toward the lid's centaur. With his trident, it cuts through the centaur effectively. A second centaur tries to strike with the stone it's carrying. And the edge of its axe hits the shaft of the trident, breaking it. Even so, the gargoyle uses the broken weapon to slice through the centaur in front of it. The boy ordered the two that had attacked to fall back so that two others could take the lead in the assault. In this way, attacking in pairs, he could give his golems time to regenerate. And with more precise commands, they could react better. This was only possible because he was issuing orders very quickly. No matter how strong the gargoyle was, it wouldn't withstand infinite attacks, and one of his weaknesses finally became apparent. It was now closer to the ground, its feet were almost touching the soil, and Dallin ordered his golems to grab the gargoyle's legs. He tried to take off again, but the golems were pulling it down. The boy advances toward the battle, mounted on his ostrich. And he remembers his friend's advice about the size of monsters. Because the bigger they are, the harder they fall. He remembers this saying and his focus on the statue's defeat. Closer to the battle, he created a staircase, the blocks of earth. Getting closer, he reinforced the command to pull it down with more force. After some struggle, the gargoyle was thrown to the ground. While it's held down by the centaurs, Dallin leaps toward the gargoyle. He opens his inventory while still in the air and attacks it by releasing several blocks he was carrying. The gargoyle is being buried by the stone blocks. The impact is violent and the golems ensure it doesn't escape during the process. The gargoyle tries to move, but the successive impacts make it difficult. It attempts to flee once the stone blocks have fallen. But the boy now summons his earthen bricks and more blocks fall on the gargoyle's head. Dallin notices that the gargoyle is breaking the blocks with its mouth before they can hit it. There are many auctions left, so he opens his inventory once more and hurls the bricks it made toward it. The gargoyle tries to react, but it's futile. In its mouth is a stone block and above it is Dallin, wielding his or mining hammer. The gargoyle is finally subdued with almost nothing left to do. Even so, the centaurs continue to immobilize it. The low squirrel celebrates from atop the ostrich. The boy prepares to strike the statue using his rock-breaking skill. And he hits it in the jaw while activating the sculpting ability. The impact point of the hammer begins to produce numerous cracks. The gargoyle implodes on itself as the dust settles a bit more. The little squirrel tries to see what happened. The gargoyle's hand tries to rise, agonizing. But it soon stops moving. The squirrel celebrates the victory even more. The stone sculpting ability leveled up several times. After that battle, it reached level 4. Looking at the shattered statue beneath his feet, Dallin celebrates knowing his team had succeeded. Meanwhile, the rabbit is terrified by what's been happening. A monkey in a suit approaches him for a conversation. The mandrill asks how the rabbit has been spending his days. is the guide for Phase 2, and the rabbit wants to know what he's doing there. The hierarchy of guides is based on the number of dungeons they control. The more dungeons one controls, the more respected they are. The mandrill is responsible for 2 dungeons, if he outranks the rabbit. And unlike the rabbit, the mandrill has a name. The rabbit asks what the mandrill is doing there. And the mandrill retorts, asking if the rabbit has been doing his job in the past few days. The rabbit says yes, but doesn't understand why the mandrill is upset. The mandrill asks again if the rabbit is sure about that. And once more, the rabbit confirms the mandrill says the number of survivors reaching his phase has doubled, and wants to know why the rabbit's performance has dropped so much. The rabbit promises to work harder, but blames it all on the Bulgato who keeps killing the level 1 boss. The mandrill seems to be running out of patience. He suggests the rabbit stop lying to him. Dabin decides that he might need those bricks later, so he stores them away again. Noticing that his stone sculpting ability is now at level 4, he assumes it's because the gargoyle was so strong. It would make sense since that battle wasn't easy. It wouldn't have been great if the gargoyle had a core, but if it did, he might not have defeated it. Even so, he decides to carve the body to save bricks. Now he's even more convinced that the gargoyle didn't have a core, but thanks to it, he managed to level up. Looking at the ruins, he remembers the rabbit saying that this was the end of the world. He wants to enter and see what secrets lie within and wonders if he'll encounter others like that along the way. Patiently staring at the entrance to the ruins, he makes up his mind. He finally decides to enter with his golems. He called out to golem number 3 who was lighting behind. After his short march, he was impressed by something he saw. The rabbit tries to evade, saying he's an honest rabbit and wouldn't lie. The mandrill keeps laughing but says he's already figured everything out. He's talking about the exile who defied fate, Dallin. The rabbit is in trouble and the worst possible person has discovered it. Dallin is trying to purify the place with his ability. He noticed that the place doesn't reset at all, and he can't explain why there are so many bones in that corridor. There aren't many carcasses and he's starting to get a bit worried. One of the centaurs steps on a plate in the floor that sinks. This triggers a barrage of arrows that hit it in the head. He didn't expect to find traps there, but he's glad he sent one of the golems ahead. The golem looks at him riddled with arrows, which is a bit bizarre. Even so, the golems aren't hurt because they regenerate. Seeing this, Dallin praises their work, then he orders them to break the walls so he doesn't have to worry about hidden arrows. An arrow falls to the ground, nearly broken. The boy praises his golems and suggests they take a break now. With them stopped, he begins to remove the arrows one by one. He finally removed the last arrow. The golems start celebrating while he examines the arrows he removed. They are so old that they're falling apart in the other traps. Instead of liquid oil, solid oil fell. And some magic circles couldn't activate due to excessive mold. The boy wonders how many years that place has been abandoned. The squirrel is pacing in circles, passing the time. It suddenly stops and Dallin asks his little friend if something happened. The squirrel runs off and the boy follows, seeing enter a small hole. He says that's a dead end. He then orders the golems to tear down the wall in front of him. They strike it together with devastating force. The power is so great that the boy thinks the heavens are on his side. And soon, his eyes widen. The squirrel points to something. There's an enormous gate and he wonders if it's a hall where the boss is hiding. Running his hands over the gate, he senses that the boss there has already been defeated. Even so, he decides to use the boar's strength at that moment. He looks through a crack calmly, but soon, his whole face is illuminated by what he sees. In front of him is a massive dragon skeleton. The little squirrel is in love with all those bones. But the boy holds it back, realizing the squirrel has a strong interest in bones. Not knowing what could happen, he orders his golems to enter as well and stay with him. Dallin told the little squirrel to be quieter because, in the worst-case scenario, they might have to flee. As he approached the dragon bones, he remarked that they were much more interesting when seen up close. He continued to hold back the excited squirrel. There was an interesting box nearby, but it seemed like a complicated night. Something was written in Hebrew on its lid, which caught the boy's attention. He looked once more at the table and a strong light overwhelmed his vision. The brightness caused him to fall to the ground, and he wondered if it was a trap. The light became increasingly complex, and the symbols began organizing themselves in the air. The boy watched it all unfold before him, unable to understand. The letters were now in a language he could comprehend, and they were calling him the Chosen One. Assuming it was addressing him, the screen confirmed it was indeed speaking to him. The boy stood up, startled, and asked who was speaking. The screen responded that it was the ruler of that place and that the hall he was in belonged to it. The boy asked if this being was the dragon whose bones were there. The screen confirmed, stating that the dragon was merely hibernating. The boy joked, saying it looked more like the dragon was in eternal sleep. The screen explained that this didn't apply to dragons and that after a battle, its life force was depleted, but to the boy, that just sounded like a fancy way of saying the dragon was dead. The boy felt pity for the entity speaking to him, assuming it hadn't accepted the passing of its master. But the screen insisted that the dragon hadn't departed. Changing the subject, the boy asked why the screen was so serious. Sensing that it had a short temper, the screen then explained that the resurrection of the dragon was the reason the temple existed, and the boy asked why this hadn't been done yet. The screen revealed that the dragon's life force was at its limit. The boy joked that it's always the same, and the screen mentioned he was lucky to be the chosen one. Shifting topics again, the boy asked why the screen said he had what was necessary. The screen explained that it was because he had passed all the tests set by the dragon. He was qualified to meet Lord Earthia. The boy tried to recall when he had passed those tests. The screen asked if he had already forgotten the challenges he faced to get there. Now he could associate the difficulties he had encountered. The screen congratulated him for accomplishing all this, and the boy thought he might receive something in return. His eyes sparkled with anticipation. The screen then said he would inherit the temple, which made him happy. But he quickly asked the screen to repeat what it had just said. You wanted to know what benefits came with assuming the temple. The screen said he would receive eternal happiness, and the boy turned away, saying he didn't need that. The screen mentioned that it would soon perish, and the boy assumed it was trying to make him feel sorry. The screen explained that only its soul remained, and it was ignoring its own departure. The boy scratched his head, deep in thought. He said he was sorry about that, but didn't want to stay there, as he had other things to do, even if it didn't seem like it. The screen asked what was wrong with him, insisting that he was refusing an honored position. And he replied that he wanted to find his comrades in that place. He was surprised by his own words, not realizing that this was his true goal. Then he said he wanted to go home. The screen asked if that was really what he wanted. Despite everything he had been through, he had been ignoring in his heart that what he truly desired was to return to his world. The screen said that if he wished for that, he should assume the temple, as he would be able to use the dragon's authority. The boy, now interested, asked what that was. The screen explained that this ability granted the power to open portals. He lay on the ground, saying that all of this was very amusing. He looked at the screen and contemplated his title as Master of the Historical Ruins. He was now organizing his thoughts, realizing the unexpected title he had gained. He wondered if he could open a portal to his world. The screen informed him that there were no limits to the portals. But opening portals consumed life energy, and the farther the destination, the more energy was required. And the way this happened was through an offering. Both living creatures and inanimate objects possessed life energy, and the boy realized that the object before him was an altar. Picking up a piece of food, he asked if it would work. The screen instructed him to place it on the altar. As soon as the food is placed on the altar, it is immediately consumed. The screen remarks that the offering was exceptional, but the boy wants to know if he can open a portal now. The screen explains that while the offering was good, one piece of meat is insufficient to open a portal. So he places much more meat on the altar. The screen, surprised by his ability to use spatial magic, asks for permission to analyze the boy. He agrees, and after a quick analysis, the screen states that it understands now. The screen, now displaying some information, reveals that he is a being who has already been offered as a sacrifice. The status window is a mark left by the death dragon on its offerings. The boy is shocked by this information. His status window has changed, and he hopes he is no longer an offering. He begins to think that his friends might also be offerings like him. He became the master of the ruin because the screen said it would erase the mark of the offering, but he still wants to know if he can use the portals. Noticing his new abilities, he realizes they are quite powerful. He calls out to the screen, now known as Alpha. He asks if he can enhance his new abilities using vital energy, to which Alpha replies that he is determined to use everything at his disposal to achieve his goals. He plans to offer more sacrifices than the system can handle. Alpha asks if it can make a request, and the boy wants to know what it is. Alpha asks him to restrain the little squirrel that is gnawing on the dragon's bones, and the boy is surprised, not even realizing when the squirrel got there. Meanwhile, the mandrill is still intimidating the rabbit. The rabbit can't believe he's being demoted. The mandrill says the rabbit allowed an offering to the death dragon to escape, which made him fail as a guide. The mandrill came there specifically to strip the rabbit of his powers. But the rabbit knows that the mandrill had wanted to get rid of him for a long time and finally found a pretext. The mandrill repeats that he is now in charge of that area. The rabbit asks where he should go now. The mandrill says that's not his problem and that the rabbit isn't square, so he'll manage. He orders the rabbit to hunt down the survivor and bring him to the mandrill. The rabbit wants to know what will be done with the boy. The mandrill says he needs to be taken down, and that this is the rabbit's final mission. Now the rabbit realizes the truth. The mandrill wants to eliminate him. The boy tells Alpha he has one last question before he leaves. He asks if Alpha knows that he wants to go home, and Alpha confirms this. The boy wants to know if he'll be able to leave peacefully once he's prepared everything, and Alpha says yes, as long as he finds a replacement. He asks if he can go out to find his successor since there's no one there. It's just an excuse. He wants to go back, but he doesn't want to abandon his friends. The next day, in the mountains of death, someone is wandering aimlessly. It's the rabbit, searching for human. He's frustrated, unable to believe the boy has gone so far. Seeing several towers, he assumes this is the path the boy took. Meanwhile, more meat is placed on the altar. Alpha consumes the offering to produce vital energy. The boy asks if it's possible to use the vital energy from all the offerings, and Alpha confirms that it is. He wants to use the first ability he gained in the temple, opening portals. Placing his hands on the ground, he manages to create a portal in front of him. Now he observes it, curious to know where it will lead. Alpha explains that in its current state, the portal leads nowhere, as two portals need to be created. The boy finds this illogical since he can't create a portal in Korea. Alpha explains that his ability is still restricted by its level, and that when he perfects it, he'll be able to go wherever he desires. Alpha adds that if he continues progressing at this rate, he'll master the ability in 20 years. Eager to test the ability, the boy summons another portal next to the first. Now they're connected, Alpha says. Alpha explains that if he enters one, he'll come out the other, and the boy is excited to test this. And that's exactly what happens, but his little squirrel didn't go with him. Even though the squirrel tries to force its way in, it cannot enter the portal. Alpha explains that only with the master's permission can other beings pass through the portals. So Day 1 gives permission for the little squirrel. As soon as he says this, the squirrel is able to pass through and begins to playfully jump in and out of the portals. Day 1 then asks if his golems can do the same, and Alpha confirms that they can, but will consume a bit of mana. Day 1 finds this very cool and already imagines summoning his golems anywhere. Alpha agrees that it's a good idea, but suggests that if Day 1 is ever in danger, it would be better for him to use the portal himself. Day 1 stretches and says he's going outside because it's too stuffy inside. Outside the ruin, he celebrates looking at one of the peaks. He imagines there must be something behind it. He moves closer for a better look. Hearing down, he is soon impressed by what he sees. It's a vast sea of clouds, and Alpha asks if he finds it beautiful. The boy replies that he does. He asks Alpha if it knows what's beneath the clouds, but Alpha says it doesn't care about anything outside the temple. The boy comments that normal people might have a problem with loneliness, but he's used to it. Curiosity is natural, and he decides to create an observatory there. Soon, his tower is built with it, He can get a sense of his surroundings using his minimap. The map reveals that they are surrounded by trees. He thought that this was the end of the world, but it seems they are surrounded by plains, and Alpha asks if he plans to descend the mountain. Alpha is concerned about losing the temple's ruler, but the boy says he's come this far and wants to explore. Alpha asks why he wants to descend the mountain, but the boy is distracted, deep in thought. He pulls out his hammer from his inventory. He asks if it's sufficient, and Alpha, curious, asks what he's doing. The boy replies that he's going to make stairs. He begins to carve the ground, and Alpha asks how he plans to create the stairs. Dallin explains that his stone sculpting ability helps him control the direction in which the rock breaks. Alpha comments that it still doesn't look like a staircase, but Dallin asks Alpha to just watch. He extends his hand over the markings he made. Then he gives a command to carve, and the ground begins to change. Much to Alpha's surprise, they work perfectly. Descending the mountain is now possible. It will just take some time, and Dallin will be able to perfect his technique in the process. He's excited and can't wait to achieve it elsewhere. A small group of players is making their way through the forest. One woman wonders where they are at that moment. She doesn't say it out loud, but she's very scared. Someone comments that they've come quite far. He wonders what kind of monsters they might encounter now that they've passed the phase. But they've already defeated many enemies, and in the process, they've become stronger. So even if problems arise, he'll manage wherever they are. They will survive. He has an iron will that keeps his determination unwavering. His words end up motivating his companions. They calm down amidst the uncertainty of that place. One woman asks if they should plant potatoes there, and he agrees. Looking in another direction, Samwoo becomes a bit pensive. The mountain on the horizon seems familiar to him, like he's seen it before. A system screen appears in front of him. It congratulates him for reaching Phase 4. Meanwhile, on the mountain, something else is happening. Dallin is quite tired and wants to rest for a bit now. He has made a large staircase and comments that it's different from digging on flat ground. He's ascended a lot, and it would be exhausting to go up and down all the time. He begins to work on the slope, and Alpha asks if this is an alternate path. Du Bois says he's placing a portal there, and Alpha praises his ingenuity. However, Du Bois forgets that he needs vital energy and is out of offerings. Alpha explains that he's connected to the altar and can make an offering from wherever he is. Alpha tells him that all he needs to do is eat, and once he's satisfied, whatever exceeds that will go to the altar. Dallin is pleased to learn this and starts eating. Since he just needs to eat a lot, he won't complain. After eating a bit, he tries to create the portal. Meanwhile, the rabbit is trudging along the mountain slope. He's completely hopeless, not expecting anything to happen. He's also feeling very hungry. The rabbit had climbed too far up the mountain. He was frustrated because he hated climbing. He was hungry, cold, and tired and couldn't remember the last time he got paid. His payment was to take down a player, which transferred their vital energy to him. He was upset, blaming everything on the human. He spotted a rat in front of him. The rat squeaked threateningly. The rabbit was startled, not realizing a rat could see him. But the rat walked on normally, unable to see the rabbit after all. He could resist for now, but if he continued to weaken, the rats could become a real threat. The more he walked, the more his life force dwindled. The rabbit collapsed on the ground, exhausted. He was so tired that he lost his ability to fly. He tried to pull himself together as best he could, but a few rats began to gather around him. At that moment, it dawned on the rabbit. If he slipped up, he would lose much more than just a few abilities. He flooded from the swarm of rats that inhabited the mountain. Terrified, he shouted for them not to follow him. He knew he needed to find shelter or risk dying. Ahead of him stood a tower and thought of hiding inside it. The rabbit quickly entered the shelter. Once inside, he tried to catch his breath. He looked up and saw a point of light. He began to climb the stairs to escape the rats that were still pursuing him. The rabbit was frustrated that the human built such tall towers. He was now very close to the top of the stairs. Finally, he reached the top of the tower. He looked back, frightened because the entrance had no door. The rats leaped at him aggressively. He said that even though he seemed weak, he could still defend himself. And he started punching the monsters. After all, he was the guide of the first phase. His plan was to lure the rats into the narrow passage and knock them out with his punches. The strategy worked, giving him the advantage. And even without his guide powers, he managed to handle the situation with just his fists. What he didn't expect was that the effort would be too much. His health was at its limit, and he was worried that he might end up being taken down. The rats kept coming, and just like him, they were starving. The rats charged at him, desperate and furious. The rabbit realized this was a battle of the famished. So he decided to make a final leap with the strength he had left. The rabbit threw himself out of the tower, with the rats following him. In a final gesture, he told the rats to try eating him. As he fell, he thought it was better to do this than to experience being eaten alive. Accumulating hatred for the mandrill, the rabbit cursed him in his final moments. Like the mandrill, he also cursed the bug human who was directly responsible for everything that had happened to him. But instead of crashing to the ground, the rabbit landed in Dallin's arms as he was passing by. Dallin had come to see why there were so many rats moving around. Now he wanted to know what the rabbit was doing there. The rabbit was terrified because he hadn't expected to run into the human at that moment. But being so weak, he began to lose consciousness. Sometime later, he started to smell something very pleasant. He woke up startled and jumped to his feet. The rabbit was inside the dragon's temple. In front of him was a plate of potatoes. The smell was too inviting and he rushed for the potatoes, intending to eat them. But someone stopped him and said he couldn't eat yet. The human told him that he had worked very hard to make those potatoes. Now the rabbit realized he wasn't dreaming. However, he didn't care about anything anymore and begged the human for some of the potatoes. He pleaded desperately, saying he was starving. Dallin asked if he really wanted some of the potatoes. The rabbit nodded vigorously. Dallin then made him an offer to become his successor in the temple. The rabbit was caught off guard by that proposal. He still hadn't understood what it meant to be a successor or exactly what it entailed. He said that he became the master of that place by chance and that he would like the rabbit to succeed him since he has experience in administration. Offering the potatoes once again, he asked if the rabbit would like to eat and if rabbits eat potatoes. The rabbit took them from the boy's hand and said that they don't eat them because there aren't any. The rat is eating voraciously and even the boy is wondering if they are that good. He is satisfied and Dallin asks if there's any problem of eating something cultivated in the dungeon. But the rabbit said that he was demoted and doesn't care anymore. Now the boy wants to know why he had been demoted. He didn't expect to hear that, and after some time and a bit of reluctance, the rabbit explained everything to him. The boy is now fully aware of everything and understood that the mandrill is planning to overthrow the rabbit. He wants to know if the rabbit went there to deliver him to the mandrill and if he could have told what he said. But the rabbit, determined, said that he won't change his mind anymore. His situation was already bad and there's not much to be done now. Now he wants to know more about this thing of becoming a successor. One door closed, but another is opening now. And resolutely, he says that his dedication is now entirely to Dallin. Alfil is listening to everything and asked if he could interfere now. The rabbit started sweating cold as soon as he heard the voice because he knew it was Urvi the dragon and he had no idea that he was in his temple. Alfil asked them to go to the altar and the rabbit was hesitant, fearing he might become his sacrifice. But the boy assured him that it wasn't about that. The rabbit asked if he had managed to open that door and Dallin said that he would be surprised much more. And opening the door, he said the rabbit would probably go crazy. The sight was really too much for the rabbit, who couldn't hide his emotions. On the ground, there was a small sprout developing. And Dallin introduced him to his potato plantation that covered the entire floor of the hall. The rabbit couldn't believe that Dallin had turned the secret room into a plantation where Urvi's skeleton was. And the boy said that to survive, food was necessary, so he couldn't waste such a useful space. And he said that the dragon must have liked the plantation, and both the rabbit and Alfil said in unison that no, he probably didn't like it. Alfil said he was almost crying for having someone else with common sense there, and Dallin couldn't see anything wrong with his conduct. The rabbit asked if he had survived all this time like that. And he said that first he made some stairs. Then he started taking care of his small garden. and occasionally he used some rats as sacrifices. And after some time, he ended up finding the rabbit again, who couldn't believe this story. He wanted to know how he managed to deal with the rats. He then called his golems, they presented themselves, and the boy asked if they were cool. But the rabbit finally understood why there are no more bosses on level 1. That human is simply out of his mind, and the rabbit is fascinated by this madness while he's just trying to adapt to the new environment. Alphil said that if they were done, the rabbit should climb onto the altar and the temple master should place his ham on him. Yijit is told, and a circle appeared on his hand. A new ability emerged, the ability to designate an administrator. Alphil said that the requirements were met, and Dallin didn't even know if heads still have new abilities. Alphil said that his devotion was too little to tell on everything, and Dallin asked if he was talking about offerings. He thinks he needs to try everything, and the rabbit asks what is going on. Dallin doesn't know if it's luck or bad luck, but he didn't expect to get so involved with that sadistic rabbit. Extending his hand once more, the circle reverberated in his hand. He designated the rabbit as an administrator, and his clothes started to shine, as did the power that was renewed in him. After shining brightly, his clothes returned to their normal color. He had become an intermediate administrator, but didn't have a name yet. He couldn't believe he had gone from being a guy to becoming an intermediate administrator. Alphil said that the rabbit's previous experience helped him, and he celebrated by saying that the flat earth had turned over. Dallin didn't expect the rabbit to be so happy about that. He called the master and said that all his loyalty was his, and that he wanted them to forget the past, and Dallin just asked him not to be over the top. But he remembered that they had been through a lot at the beginning, and he ordered the rabbit to kneel, who didn't understand. It finally hit him, the rabbit had gained a new master along with his new title. Dallin ordered him to look down. Now the rabbit received his first command. He is into garden planting potatoes, a whole bunch of them. The rabbit is already exhausted from so much work. He asked if he really has to do that, and the boy says he needs to pay for his sins. The rabbit realized he had become a slave and needs to urgently think of something to change the situation. Screams echo through the forest at the beginning. A frightened boy tries to defend himself from an enraged boar. He tries to fight back, but even with a sword in his hands, his efforts were useless. Mandrill observes from above that the new participants perish very quickly. He feels something different happening. He lost his connection with the rabbit. He starts thinking about what could have happened to him. In a pot there are some cooked potatoes, and Dallin calls his administrator to have a snack with him. He doesn't understand that the potatoes are those because in the pot, he only sees plant roots. The rabbit says that the floor of the room is warm, and Dallin responds that he did that so he could plant. The rabbit asks if the little squirrel disappeared, and Dallin says it's in the room too. He has his mouth full, and the rabbit wants to know what he ate. Dallin said that the squirrel likes to eat bones. The rabbit asks why the squirrel climbed onto the golem, and Dallin told him not to do that. With his tiny hands, he made a hole in the golem. Once the hole was open, he was ready, and he opened his mouth, dropping the bones inside. As soon as he did that, he quickly closed the hole and hid his bones. Dallin said it must be a habit of storing food, but he wished the little squirrel would stop doing that. With him in his hands, he started noticing something. He had a task for the rabbit, who said he had just started resting, but he ordered him to get up anyway. The rabbit is very annoyed because careful and hardworking bosses are the most annoying. The rabbit is now carrying the bones from that place. He wants to know why he's carrying those bones, and Dallin already knows what to do, so he called everyone there. He ordered the golems to crush the bones, and the rabbit was afraid of their strength. Once that was done, Dallin used his purification ability. And he told the rabbit to spread the bone dust over the field, and he asked why he should do that. He said that they are fertilizers, and the rabbit was thinking that he was crazy, but now he understood and even found it genius. Despite working hard in that place, the rabbit had his moments of joy, like the meals, and it was one dish he liked more than the others. While boar barbecue, it was simply fabulous. And with excitement, he takes each piece of meat to his mouth. He feels like he is being transported to paradise with every bite of meat he consumes. Outside the ancient ruins, something is happening. The mandrill is perplexed by what he is seeing. The boss was no longer there, only his remains. The core was already in Dallin's hands, and farming golems is another thing the rabbit loved. He asked why the rabbit was smiling, and he said he's sure the mandrill must be going crazy right now and he knows exactly how he must be feeling. He didn't expect there to be a tunnel there. That is why he couldn't find Don, who asked why he seemed offended, and the rabbit changed the subject. He suggested placing a portal there, so they wouldn't always have to walk, and Dallin praised the idea. The portal was immediately created and soon they were home. Alpha warned that he was wasting vital energy, but Dallin said that it was an investment. And now that he was there, he had something else to think about and do. The potatoes had grown too much and the rabbit says they eat people now. Dallin thinks it was the fertilizer that did this. He is sad because the plants he took such good care of are now trying to devour him. Alpha suggests that he use the trap insulation skill, and the rabbit says that if those things are named as traps, they wouldn't attack them. The boy realizes that this skill would be very useful for them. Meanwhile, time continued to pass in that place and more players kept arriving at the dungeon. The mountain remained isolated and feared, but Dallin continued to build his ladder on the mountain. The rabbit says that no one is more addicted to work than that boy, and he doubts if he is really human. But after much work, even he needed to rest, needed to lie down and eat something. The rabbit thinks about it and suggests they eat something sweet. Through light reached the forest. At the beginning the rabbit said, he heard a participant say that there's honey inside a carnivorous plant while he was being devoured, and they went there to investigate. Dallin clears a path through the bushes, and soon he spots something that catches his attention. There were large carnivorous plants there, and from what seemed to be their mouths, a viscous yellow liquid was dripping. He asks if that's what it is, and the rabbit confirms, saying they'll eat them if they get any closer. Dallin thinks for a moment about what he can do now. One of the golems starts lifting a block of earth through a portal. The golems come out and collect the plants. The liquid is corn syrup, not honey, but it's still sweet. The rabbit thought it would be difficult, but there's nothing Dallin can't do. He looks back and gets startled because he saw more players. The rabbit immediately hides, disappearing from sight. Dallin already knew that the rabbit would hide if he saw players, but he didn't expect him to do it so quickly. Some of the players are harassing a small person. They are threatening a boy, demanding that he hand over his belongings. Dallin notices that adults are threatening someone who still looks like a child. The rabbit says telepathically that this is human nature, and Dallin gets startled and almost screams, but the rabbit says it's his ability. Dallin wants to know if he can do that too, but the rabbit says he probably can't because he's human. However, he ends up managing to do it. Alpha explains that since they're from the same sanctuary, they can communicate like that as long as they concentrate. He asks the rabbit what they can do without risking being caught by Demandrel. The little boy clings tightly to the bag he's carrying as Dallin watches him. He remembers some things he went through. These are definitely not good memories he has. Dalvan thinks it's almost time for them to be there. The adults keep harassing the boy more and more. An animal approaches them, making noise. It's the Dakmo, bite-pull frogs. Armed and as friendly as a lone shark collecting a debt, one of the adults realizes they're bigger than the frogs and arms himself with his sword. He prepares to strike one of the little frogs, but his arm is quickly sliced off, and his arm falls to the ground. Still holding the sword, he starts screaming in desperation. They may not look like it, but the little frogs are quite vicious, steeped in malice. They say they grew up in a rough place. The kid who was being bullied is terrified by the situation. The players are now horrified because they didn't imagine the little frogs would be so brutal. One of them, clearly with a deficit in intelligence, charges towards the frogs. The frog opens its mouth with glee, and it strikes with a mocking move because it only disarmed the fool. Now the oppressor is being oppressed and the guy's underwear is already getting heavy. The bell rings because the little frogs are slicing everyone up at snack time. The little frogs are the weakest monsters in the dungeon, but what they lack in strength they make up for in malice. If you slip up, it's the end. But it's in the face of danger that humans awake in their hidden potentials. Just like what happened with Delon's little friend who turned into a beast after a stressful event. Delon imagines that the kid might become as tough as his friend some one day. The kid was running in panic and ended up crashing into Delon. They fall to the ground, completely knocked down. He asks what that was and thinks he almost cried from the pain, but Alpha insists that he did cry from the pain. That was the kid who was now terrified and begging for help. He tells the boy to get up, but before he can finish the thought, they hear the sound of little frogs. Two of them were already coming at them with the speed of tourists in a dangerous neighborhood with iPhones in hand. But Dalan already knew the procedure and called upon the strength of the wild boar for wreaks of havoc. The first little frog was quickly taken out, and the second got a free orthodontic treatment. The kid looks at Dalan, completely impressed. That guy is way too strong and doesn't have any side effects from substances because he's very hairy. One of the little frogs makes a face as if it knows things have gone wrong for them. They advance cowardly, ready to slaughter the humans. Dalan narrowly dodges the amphibian's mouth. But coming at him in a cowardly way is just wrong, and now he's furious. And he quickly delivered a knee to the frog's belly to make sure it understands the situation. The second little frog charges in thinking it's the main character on the story. Dalan held its head with great love and care, and prepared to throw it, and he hit the first frog with the body of the second to show that the situation here is serious, and if it weren't, it would be for the frogs. A third little frog advances with a broken sword in hand. The blow barely missed Dalan. He narrowly avoided being hit by the beast. Taking advantage of the proximity, he quickly delivered a friendly elbow strike. The kind that only breaks ribs. Behind him, a little frog was armed with some shark weapons. It charges for the attack, thinking that this story is all about its fraudy way of life. The kid screams in desperation, warning Don of the danger. He turns quickly, facing the threat. And with the privileges that only the plot can provide, he managed to pull an item from his inventory. A large block of earth fell on the little frog. The remaining frogs, still alive, are now reflecting on whether it's really worth continuing to take that free beating. After a simple deliberation, it decided to get out of there. Dalan realizes the fight is over, but he's feeling shoals running down his body. He thinks it might be the impressed look from the kid. The snotty kid was looking at him as if he was seeing a god incarnate. Dalan still doesn't know how to react. He stands still as the boy approaches him. He warned the boy not to follow him because he's going to a dangerous place. And he said that he couldn't use the ability again and was almost passing out from a lack of glucose. The boy asks if he mentioned something about sweet food, and reaching into his bag, he asked if this would help and extended his hand to him. Dalan observes it for a brief moment. He can't believe what he's seeing in that hostile environment. Food is one of the few things that make life interesting, but he hadn't been able to fully enjoy the taste of things for a while. That's why he took a risk to get something sweet from carnivorous plants. He was already missing eating something sweet because sweetness is happiness, and the snotty kid's offer is too good to refuse. The boy has a bottle of Dolly with him. And it wasn't just any bottle, it was 1.5 liters of the purest sugar syrup. And he innocently says that he has 2 more bottles. Don says that 1 bottle per day will last for 3 days. The kid didn't understand anything, and he says that's the cost of special training. Twilight falls over the dungeon. He's on top of one of its towers, looking at the map, and the kid asks who that really tough guy is. He said that he's human too, and that they should go underground now. He drinks his Dolly Guarana, thinking that the kid must be exhausted and that going underground is the safest thing to do. Once there, the snotty kid can't stop being amazed by what he sees. He asks the boy to choose a pillow but can only think that all of this was done by done. Night finally falls upon them. The boy said that he was summoned while he was leaving the market because he was shopping for his mother. He's an enthusiastic kid, 14 years old, and his name is Don. Dalan thinks he acts too nice on purpose out of fear of being judged or hated, and he's the first adult to help him in that place and tells the boy that you should see him as a savior, but the boy thinks he's talking to himself and is already thinking about being cautious around him. The kid asks if some kind of ability was used to build that tower. Dalan said yes, and the boy wants to know what it is. He gave a small demonstration and said it's an earth control ability. And now he wants to know what ability the boy received when he was summoned, and he said it's the god of food's ability. He gains strength when he's full, and his physical abilities are doubled when he's hungry. Dalan didn't know something like that existed and realizes it's similar to the boar's strength that he has and asks if he gets weak when he's hungry. The boy doesn't know because he gets hungry easily and hasn't been full since he arrived there. Dalan thinks that's tragic and decides to take care of him from now on. He puts plenty of food on the table and asks the boy to satisfy his hunger. The moon lights up the night sky of the dungeon. The rabbit is in the forest because his boss sent him to get salt stones. He complains that Dalan is too arrogant. He's moving stealthily so as not to be noticed and hopes not to encounter the mandrill around here. He doesn't even know what a salt stone looks like and is very upset with his boss because of that. Telepathically, the boss asks if the rabbit is doing his job, and he ended up getting a big scare. The rabbit says he doesn't know what it looks like, and neither does Dallin. He suspects it looks like a regular stone. However, he asks the rabbit to come back because it's already late and he wants to know if the boy is still there and that he's very hungry. Dallin tells the rabbit that he finished making the barbecue sauce. The rabbit was so happy about that he shouted in the middle of the night that his boss was the best there is. He returned to the cave and his boss thanked him for his hard work. He laughed at the rabbit's camouflage, which looked funny, and the rabbit said it was his fault for making him go out at night. He removed the camouflage and Dallin asked him to keep quiet because the boy was already asleep, and the rabbit asked for soda, but there was only a little left. The rabbit complained about the taste of the drink, saying it tasted like meat, and Dallin said he knew he would react that way. He told the rabbit that he should eat the leaves he was wearing, but the rabbit said it was awful to have to eat leaves. Dallin told him he shouldn't say things like that, and with the rabbit squirming on the floor, he noticed something. He reached out his hand toward him, and the rabbit began to apologize. Worried, he begged to be spared because he thought he was about to be punished, but Dallin simply removed a leaf that was still on his face. He tasted the leaf, and the rabbit asked if he hadn't also said that he didn't like leafy greens. The boy took out a piece of meat. Much to the rabbit's surprise, the rabbit wanted to know if he was going to eat the meat with that leaf, and Dallin said he would show him the taste of paradise, and showing him, he said that he had finished wrapping the meat, and he made sure to put it in the rabbit's mouth. The rabbit fell in love with that combination of interesting texture and wonderful flavor. Dallin explained that the leaf on his clothing was edible and that it's even better with meat. That leaf is perilla leaf, and he had the rabbit collect more of them, and after using the leaves, he also used the remaining seeds, and in a large pot he fried them over the fire, and after pressing them he managed to extract oil from them. He finally produced perilla oil. Now he only needed salt to complete the sauce. The rabbit didn't know what that was, but Dallin said he would know as soon as he brought back a salt stone. The day dawns in the dungeon. The boy has a piece of meat in his mouth and a stick in his hands. Dallin asks him to stay focused because the little frog is coming. The little frog is heading towards the boy. He told the boy not to be scared and to remember that when he's full he gets stronger. But it seems the lesson didn't go too well. The boy apologizes, but Dallin says that no one is that good right from the start. Even so, the boy was very surprised that the young man had managed to capture one of those little frogs. And he said that where they're going is dangerous, so he should train the boy here because his ability is very good for fighting. He said he would give him food to store in his inventory, but the boy didn't know what that was. It's his personal storage, and he asked if the guy didn't tell him anything about it, and the boy said no. It seems the mandrill didn't tell him out of pure sadism, which explains why the boy has been carrying items in his hands. The rabbit said that it must be the boss' fault because without the first level boss many players are moving on to the next level. The boy is worried because to him, Dallin seems to be talking to himself again. Then he says they should continue the training. Time passed and the rabbit is now a leaf collector. Dallin gives instructions to the boy as if he were his coach, and this time he manages to hit the little frog. The boy's ability has leveled up to 2 now. He signals his thanks to Dallin, who is watching him with gratitude for the progress made. The last day of training arrived and the sun heated up the dungeon. The two of them are now in what is called the burning desert. 2 humans were there now and with them a rabbit. After hearing that he had seen a salt desert, he made him lead them to it. The heat was so intense that it irritated Dallin, who said that if they didn't find anything, he would be upset with the boy. And the boy said it was someone from his group who said that near the desert there was a place with white sand that appears when the tide goes out. Dallin hopes to find it because they have a bottle full of oil. And he says that he has now made up his mind. That night they will have braised pork belly for dinner. 15 long minutes of walking through the desert passed. Dallin is exhausted and starts to imagine that they won't find anything there. Even the boy is losing hope and says it's hard to walk in the sand because his feet keep sinking. He says that the salt desert might not exist, but that's not what Dillum was talking about. Their method might be wrong. And in front of the boy he installs a portal. He told the boy not to be surprised and asked him to stay behind him, and from the portal, the golems begin to emerge. The boy is amazed because they look like tanks, and Dallin says they are made of earth. That's just the beginning, and the boy will learn to handle himself well. And he says grateful that he will do his best. Dallin is pleased because the boy is smart and regrets not being able to go with him. The rabbit telepathically asks, and his master hasn't forgotten anything. He's very hot, and Dallin says he couldn't build a tower because it would attract too much attention, but he could come inside the golem if it's too bad out there. He continues outside, exhausted from the heat and fatigue. He doesn't even know what salt is and doesn't understand why they worked so hard to find it soon. Something appears on the horizon. The rabbit wakes his eyes to see better. He focuses a bit more on what's ahead. There were many giant scorpions and many camels too, it heard. He wonders where those creatures are headed. He calls his boss to come outside and see it too. Dallin and the boy are surprised by what they see. It seems the salt desert really does exist. An achievement was unlocked for discovering the salt desert. The reward is to enhance the taste of the salt. Dallin doesn't even understand the reason for that achievement, and the boy is very impressed because he had never seen anything like it. He boasts to the rabbit, who says he's not like a mandrill. The little boy takes a bit of salt on the tip of his finger and tasting it, he confirms that it's really salt. The whole ground is made of salt. He suggests they compete to see who can collect more salt. He asks the boy what he said, and the boy realizes that Dallin had already collected quite a lot of salt. The boss says that amount should be enough. They have the perfect combination to make that day's dinner. And the rabbit doesn't understand why they went through all that trouble just for that. Dallin gives the boys some blocks of salt and says they should last in a lifetime, to which the boy thanks him and says he will remember him. And the young man returns the thanks because they only found. Thanks to the boy. Has his hand touched the boy's head? A yellow light appeared. Alpha says that the requirements of helping the master and having a sincere opinion from him have been met. Now the boy can become a dragon apostle. The rabbit suddenly appears and the boy is startled because he can now see him. He tells the boy to be quiet because it's not the time to be promoted. Dallin pushes the rabbit aside and asks Alpha if the achievement was to be impressed, and he confirms that it was like a kind of test. Now he realizes that as an apostle, the mark of the death dragon can be erased, but Alpha says that the boy won't have as many privileges. Dallin wants to know what the good part of that is then. He said that it was good for them, especially for Dallin. The boy will be able to gather vital energy. While he works, he can perform sacrifices since Dallin is too lazy to do them. Dallin says he goes out and always brings back a lot, and Alpha says it's not just that, and that the temple's goal is to bring the dragon back. He now wants to know what the benefit is for the boy, and Alpha says the benefit is serving Ardia. The rabbit interrupts and says that the apostle doesn't need to eat to bring vital energy, and Alpha confirms the information, and he told him to think about the boy's ability. Dallin remembered the god of food ability. His strength doubles if he gets full. It remains to be seen what would happen if he got completely full. As an apostle, the duration of the ability will increase. The boy has no idea what they're talking about. Dallin sums it up by saying that the boy will be able to keep eating even when he's full, and he loved that he asks if the way to designate him is the same as the one used on the rabbit. Extending his hand, he designates him as an apostle, and the boy is enveloped in energy. He felt much stronger and asked if this was the power of the dragon. He felt incredibly powerful now that he was a dragon apostle. Dallin doesn't notice any difference and thinks the boy is emphasizing the dragon part too much. The snotty boy shouts out loud that he's now a dragon apostle. Dallin thinks he's thirsty for attention. The rabbit doesn't know what that's about, and the young man says it's something you gain with age. The kid is very happy, but he quickly looks scared in a certain direction. They were surrounded by giant scorpions. He asks his boss what they will do now that they are surrounded. Dallin says they'll think of something. He's not even worried. He mentions that this is the boy's graduation test. The boy can't believe he has to do this, and Dallin says he just needs to avoid the venom and thinks that even if the boy gets hurt, hell heal him. The young man calls for the elephant golem and promptly climbs on it because it's fun to watch a fight from up high. The rabbit says they're weak monsters, and Dallin encourages the boy, reminding him that he's now a dragon apostle. He throws a Bechtel into the boy. He tells him that even though he's scared, he should remember what he trained for, and the boy remembers why he needs to become stronger. The boy was almost ready to give up on his training. He doesn't even know why Dallin trains so hard. And the young man says it's tough to be young and have to work so hard already. However, the boy should continue because he's capable of doing it. And the reason for this is just one thing. The boy needs to fight to survive and to make it back to his world. Dallin praises the snotty boy's determination. The kid runs towards the scorpions. The first one tries to strike him with its stinger, but the boy managed to dodge the attack. He continues advancing, much to Dallin's surprise. He jumps, ready to hit the monster, and he brings the baton down with a precise blow to what would be its head. The boy realizes that his attack was super effective. Dahlin reminds the boy to always check his fullness level, and that another scorpion is approaching from behind. He eats a bit more and lands another blow on the scorpion. The rabbit notices that the boy isn't having any trouble but wonders what Dahlin is up to now. The young man is holding a large pot in his hands. He looks at the boy, who's fighting well, and finds it hard to just stand there watching. The rabbit is wondering what he's going to do. Dahlin says he's going to eat those scorpions. The rabbit now thinks this human must have come from China. One of the scorpions tries to grab the boy with its pincer, but he uses the baton to defend himself. He puts in some effort to avoid being overpowered, and lifting the baton, he manages to free himself from the scorpion's grip with another strike. He manages to tear off one of the pincers. It falls to the ground lifeless. Dahlin calls for his successor, who responds timidly, and he orders him to collect the scorpions. Given the possibility of venom, he purifies them with his ability. One of the pincers is now in the basin. Everything is properly prepared. Meanwhile, the boy is surrounded by scorpions that join the wrong team soon. He smells something in the air. He quickly asks what it is because the smell is really good, and the rabbit is fanning the fire as best he can. He asks the boss if putting salt in the oil is a good idea, and he says he can taste it if he wants to. The boy is upset, imagining that they're eating something delicious. Without him he's distracted, and one of the scorpions sneaks up on him. The boy asks to eat too, and while he does so, he strikes the scorpion that was behind him. The appearance was very appealing. The pincer looked like that of a giant lobster. Dahlin says that if the boy doesn't hurry, they'll eat everything without him. The boy is now determined. He heads towards the remaining scorpions with a clear bowl. There was nothing the scorpions could do against the boy soon. They were all eating peacefully that same night. They were in the forest at the beginning. Dahlin gifts the boy with a hide and says he might encounter other players there. He's very grateful for the gaze that only cost a few sodas. He told the boy not to cry because he'd soon realized that soda has a different value there. The boy smiles at that remark. He says goodbye and continues on his way alone. But Dahlin hopes they'll meet again in the future. Not just the boy but all his friends. Don is at the dragon's temple and asks if the little squirrel was okay in his absence. He's sad about parting ways with the boy, but happy to have made it back home now. He sees that the little squirrel probably didn't stop eating because he's quite chubby. Alpha asks if he could take care of the temple like it's his home, but the young man thinks he's being annoying. But after thinking a bit more, he decides he'll work more on the temple. Alpha has been observing him and thinks that human is impressive, and only time will tell if he found that temple by luck. Investigating the temple, Dahlin was thoughtful about some things. He wants to know if resetting a trap will bring the oil back to it, and Alpha says yes, and he asked the rabbit to bring it, much to Alpha's surprise. Appreciating the rabbit's work, he said he'd let him eat some meat. Alpha wants to know what he's going to do, and Dahlin tells him to watch. He cleaned the pot and filled it with the oil he had made. Now he used his trap insulation ability. Then he removed the oil and used the trap reset ability. The idea worked. He had made more oil now. Alpha asks what kind of trap that was, and Dahlin says it's an infinite oil source. Much to the system's annoyance, Alpha's patience had reached its limit. The day dawns in the first phase region. Mandrill notices that the boss has disappeared and the boars are becoming increasingly scarce. Quality is better than quantity for vital energy, and the first phase isn't filtering them well. Only the little frogs are in sufficient numbers, so he needs to do something about it. A stone falls to the ground, bouncing. It's the rabbit who kicked him, annoying to having to collect more leaves. Dahlin told him to do that while he built the staircase. He could refuse, but then he wouldn't be eating meat anytime soon, which made the rabbit extremely frustrated. Nearby, some movement catches his attention. There was a small group of little frogs walking by. He hinted, thinking it was the baboon, but it was just frogs, and he saw they were armed with enchanted weapons. Those items shouldn't be in the first phase. Mandrill appears behind the rabbit without recognizing him, almost scaring him to death. The rabbit is now sweating cold. Completely terrified, Mandrill looks at the bush below him. He saw familiar white fur and ears. Now the rabbit was even more terrified. Mandrill reaches out his hand to grab the rabbit. And pulling him by the ears, he realizes it's just an ordinary rabbit. He observes it for a moment. The rabbit is munching on some leaves, and he confirms that this isn't the rabbit he was looking for because he's using an ability that deceived him. Mandrill tosses it aside, uninterested. The rabbit stays on the ground for a few moments. He starts trying to get up. In front of him are some little frogs looking for a snack. One of them prepares to strike him, but the rabbit, enraged, shakes off the frogs, saying that Mandrill will pay for this one day. On the opposite side of the mountains, Delon works with great dedication. Being on the mountainside makes him adrenaline-fueled, and he asks the ostrich to watch over him. He brought the golem as a precaution because he was always crossing a cliff. His stone-breaking ability was already at level 7. Sacrifices are hard work, but repetitive tasks are his specialty, like breaking the cliff, and suddenly, a message appears saying he had entered stage 4. Even he wasn't expecting that. In his mind, it didn't make sense for the stages to be so close, and Alpha says he doesn't know what was done with the land. Delon asks what Alpha had said. The color of the mist in that place was different, and it also had a different smell. Delon begins to lose consciousness. After a while, he wakes up with the ostrich in front of him. Alpha asks if the temple master has woken up. He asks what happened, and Alpha thanks him for bringing the ostrich. The mist is poisonous, and the ostrich brought him back before something worse happened. That was a close call. Delon needs something to help him with this, and it seems he had an idea. Alpha says he should return to the temple, but the young man says hell continue descending. With a handkerchief in hand, he says hell deal with this fine dust. But Alpha insists again that it's poison. Alpha can't believe he wants to go through the poison using just a piece of cloth. He says no, but if he uses the purification ability on the handkerchief, it might work. At first, that ability wasn't very good. He used it to purify mushrooms, but after a while, the ability didn't develop any further. No matter how hard he tried, it didn't progress until the poison cloud appeared. The gas mass is just a small protection. His plan was to use the ability on the entire poison cloud, and he began to use his ability little by little. He noticed that the clouds didn't regenerate, which would make his job of clearing the path easier. He purified the cloud and made the staircase repeatedly. This would be very tedious for some people, but Delon isn't a normal person, and after much effort, he managed to pass through the thick mist, contemplating a beautiful scene. In a single day, he reached level 10. Perhaps by increasing the ability, he might be able to purify even bigger things. Birds fly across the dungeon sky, but one of them has a silhouette that's far too different. Delon tries to see better because it was too big, and the griffin was already too close to him on the mountainside. It attacks him with its claws. The attack kicked up a lot of dust in the area. Delon had protected himself with a block of earth. Letting it go, he made his way back with his ostrich. He ordered the golem to climb as fast as it could. The griffin watched them fleeing up the stairs. It took flight in their direction. The beast sensed something was wrong. It halted its advance upon reaching the poisonous cloud, as if it were a barrier separating the phases. Dalvin saw that it couldn't pass through the cloud, acting as a boundary between stages. Soon, the griffin gave up and returned to where it came from. Stage 4 might be full of such creatures, and now he doesn't know what to do. The griffin is flying high above. It clings to the mountainside with its powerful claws. It sees that above it are the stairs and the poisonous cloud. It climbs the slope carefully, and finally reaches the stairs. It begins to follow the path now that it's clear. Unaware of what was approaching, Dalvin continues to excavate the mountain. His carving ability is now level 8. He was pleased with this because if he continues like this, he'll be able to descend much faster. The rabbit is returning to the temple, tired and thinking about talking to his boss. Finding leaves is becoming increasingly difficult, and his boss never seems to get tired. He even wonders what the human is doing now. High in the sky, a griffin is flying. The rabbit can hardly believe what he's seeing. Dalvin is exhausted and thinks about stopping to rest for a while. Telepathically, the rabbit says they're in big trouble. He's panicking, saying that things have gone crazy. Dalvin wants to know what it is, and the rabbit says there's an eagle there, and Alpha corrects him, saying it's a griffin. Alpha says it must be stopped because if the temple is destroyed, a contract will have problems. Dalvin has no idea what contract he's talking about, and Alpha says he could lose the temple's abilities to Dowan's despair. The griffin soars into the sky with its wings and dives down, destroying part of the ruins. The debris begins to fall to the ground. The rabbit is thrown aside. He wonders if he should flee now. He only receives useless orders and wishes he could find his safe shelter, but he pauses to think about it. He shouldn't think about it because that place is now his home. The rabbit becomes resolute and determined. Dalvin arrives and puts his hand on the rabbit, saying that's the spirit, but he made one mistake. That temple in front of them. It was their home and it would be protected. He calls his golems to assist him. They appear ready to obey. The griffin hovers above them in the air. Dowan looks at the griffin and asks if it had already forgotten about him. The griffin screeches angrily as it approaches. Dowan summons some cubes and orders the golems to hurl them at the griffin. The first block hits it squarely. The dust obscures the view of what happened, and the griffin emerges unscathed from the attack. Dowan is impressed by its physical resilience. The rabbit says it must have caused some damage, but they need to attack with something sharp. Dowan opens his inventory to see what he has. He grabs his spear and uses the strength of the boar, and hurls it forcefully at the griffin. It strikes, seemingly embedding itself in the creature. Dowan realizes he hit it. The griffin writhes in pain and strikes the spear with women's paws, and it falls among its feathers. The young man concludes that his throw wasn't strong enough, and now the griffin seems even more enraged. It resumes its assault on the temple. Much to everyone's dismay, Alpha says something strange is going on because the griffin is focused on the temple, not Dowan. Alpha suspects it's searching for the altar, which makes sense given the direction of the attacks. Dowan remembers the dragon's chamber, and the rabbit says the griffin is headed for the altar. The rabbit explains that it must have identified that the altar is the temple's energy center, which is why it's targeting it. Dowan thinks that if they go there, they might be able to stop it. He tells the rabbit to take care of the golems and runs off. The rabbit is frustrated because the golems don't listen to him. Dowan is searching for the griffin. The rabbit thought Dowan would do something clever, but he just ran off. The young man is on the ostrich, looking for something, and he finds what he was looking for inside the temple. The griffin is breaking walls with its strength. It has finally reached the place where the altar is located, his position behind the carnivorous plants. The griffin is drooling with anticipation, but its beak is struck by a rock. It was Dowan trying to get its attention. He said that this place is cruel for invaders, the potato field. The vines surge forward, attempting to capture the griffin, which is now startled. The griffin is completely entangled by them. It struggles with all its might not to be dragged away, and the vines begin to snap under its strength. Dowan didn't expect this creature to be so strong. He opens his inventory. While running, he searches for items that could help him. He places an item on the ground. Alpha asks what he's doing. The young man says that if attacking from afar doesn't work, maybe up close it might. With his hand on the ground, he reset the trap in the room. And from the ground, structures begin to emerge. The trap had reset, and he orders the arrows to be fired. They are launched directly at the griffin. The griffin can't dodge because it's held by the vines. The arrows hit the griffin squarely. Alpha was pleased with this, as the traps have been used very effectively. The attack ceased after a while, and Dowan asked why. Alpha explains that the arrows ran out, and the trap needs to be reset again, but Dowan doesn't have enough vital energy for that. The griffin is motionless, and he's unsure if it's alive or if it's been defeated. Its eyes were closed, but as soon as he approaches, the eyes snap open. The griffin moves, destroying the arrow trap. Dowan can't believe this creature is so strong now. He thinks it might be the end for him, and Alpha doesn't understand why he said that the griffin attacks with one of its claws, and the young man narrowly dodges. Alpha starts lamenting to RT for not being able to fulfill its duty. Dowan says he could reset it later. The beast continues its assault, and Dowan barely manages to keep dodging. Now in the air, he feels he won't be able to avoid the next strike, but one of his golems catches him with its hand. The rabbit said that the golems didn't want to listen to him, but he arrived just in time to save the day. Dowan is safe in the hands of the gorilla golem. The rabbit gives orders to the golems to finish the griffin off. The rabbit asks his boss if he's okay, and Dowan says that his successor arrived just in time. The golems are holding the griffin, which is struggling as much as it can. He instructs two gorillas to hold its wings and the others to secure its legs, and tells the rabbit to move away from there. The griffin is now completely immobilized. All that is left are close combat attacks, and the only ability that could do something to it is the strength of the boar. Dowan needs to try and see if this works on monsters from the fourth phase. He activates his ability, preparing to strike, and hurls himself toward the immobilized griffin. He focuses all his strength into a single attack, and brings down the metal bar on the creature's head. The bar bent as soon as it made contact. It was bizarre, and he could hardly believe what happened. The griffin shakes its head, causing Dowan to fall. The rabbit is terrified that his boss might get hurt because the griffin intends to snack him up in midair, and closing its beak, it manages to catch him. The rabbit watches the scene. Saddened and in disbelief, the metal bar falls to the ground. Bent, the rabbit, says that none of this makes sense. The griffin stands with its beak closed, victorious. But soon it begins to sweat profusely and look unwell. The desperation is so intense that it manages to break free from the golems. It flees, smashing through walls. The griffin tries to save Dowan, but is still worried. Dowan appears behind him, saying that he thought he was going to die, and the rabbit says he understands. He takes a brief pause to process what he just heard, and from whom. He's crying because he thought his boss was done for. He tries to hug Dowan, who pushes him away because he's dirtying his clothes outside the ruin. There's a lot of debris inside. There's also plenty of destruction. The young man says the place has turned into a dump. The rabbit wants to know how he managed to survive that. He explains that as soon as the griffin tried to eat him, he threw some salt stones into its mouth, and the salt caused it to react that way. The rabbit says he's very lucky and wants to know how the griffin managed to get there. And Dowan spoke of the route that leads to the fourth phase via the cliff, and that he encountered the griffin there. The rabbit never imagined that the fourth phase was so close, since he had never been there. The rabbit wants to know if the griffin is dead, but Dowan says that the salt wouldn't be enough to kill it. Alpha warns that the griffin will return, and the rabbit adds that the poison clouds will reset, but the griffin might come back before that happens, and then it will be over. Dowan asks the rabbit if he knows when the reset will happen, but he doesn't know, thinking that the griffin might return. The young man decides to build a line of defense using his reset ability. He begins to reconstruct the temple. However, he doesn't have enough vital energy to finish everything. He needs to go out hunting and doesn't know how many sacrifices it will take to rebuild the place. The rabbit asks Alpha what can provide vital energy, and Alpha says that plants and animals can work. Dowan asks the rabbit what he plans to do. The rabbit presents a few items, and Alpha identifies them as enchanted weapons, explaining that they can also be used as sacrifices since they contain vital energy. Dowan wants to know where the rabbit got them, and he explains that he took them from the frogs. They're from the second phase, but Mandrill brought them to the first phase. As soon as Dowan holds one of the enchanted weapons, he earns another achievement and, as a reward, gains information. One of the knives has a cutting force ability. He examines the instrument closely. He asks Alpha if he could use this ability, and Alpha explains that in his current state, he could only use it if he were a mage. Dowan asks if Mandrill is a mage, but the rabbit explains that Mandrill uses the dungeon system and only places vital energy on the altar. Dowan then asks if their altar is an altar, and the rabbit confirms that it is, reminding him that they're in the dragon's temple. The young man grins mischievously because he's just had an idea. The rabbit feels uneasy, sensing something bad about this idea. The path leads to the altar, so they will steal it. The rabbit and Alpha are speechless at the suggestion. The rabbit thinks his boss is mentally unwell when Alpha says, in theory, it makes sense. The altar must be a battery of vital force, and Dowan plans to take that energy for himself. Stealing the altar is dishonorable, but if it belongs to the death dragon, it's different, Alpha says. Please, Dowan asks the rabbit what he thinks of the plan. The rabbit imagines that if the altar disappears, Mandrill will be in big trouble. With a wicked look in his eyes, he admits that his boss has had the best idea ever. Dowan assigns the rabbit to carry out an important task. The rabbit is pouring a viscous liquid over the grass. The trail he's made is reasonably large, and he's quite tired. He sighs because even he has to work now. If Mandrill enchants weapons, he must be visiting the altar frequently, and if they go without a plan, they'll be defeated. That's why Dowan asked him to do this. But the rabbit still doesn't know exactly what his task is. As he strikes two stones together, he says he knows nothing. He just did what he was told to do. Soon the fire begins to spread through the forest. Mandrill is surprised by the growing fire. He has no idea how it happened. The rabbit telepathically says that it was fun, and Dowan thinks the rabbit might have some issues. He sits patiently waiting in front of him as a hole, and out of it emerges the little squirrel, very cheerful. That was the signal. Mandrill had left the temple. Now was Dowan's turn to enter the ruins. Inside, he encounters something different. The altar was in plain sight, to his surprise, but something seemed different about it. Alpha explains that the altar's vital force has changed, making it usable by non-mages. Although he's reluctant to admit it, the death dragon used the separator. Even Dowan with enough authority could use the altar. He notices that Alpha seems a bit unsettled by this. The young man starts digging around the hole to seal the altar. He hears a sound and wonders if Mandrill has already returned. The rabbit tells him not to worry about that. It's just Mandrill shouting angrily about the rabbit's work. What's never been happier in his life for causing arson in the temple. This should be enough, and Dowan wonders if he should call the golems to help. Setting up a portal, the golems appear, and they carry the altar through the newly opened portal. Alpha suggests they should use magic to erase their tracks and throw Mandrill off their trail. It's just about creating new tracks to cover the old ones. Dowan comments that Alpha seems a bit aggressive. Now they have to destroy the temple. The young man starts using his hammer to cause destruction. Mandrill, far away, senses something is happening. He doesn't know why the temple would be collapsing. Mandrill rushes back, worried about the integrity of the altar. He runs desperately towards the temple. When he arrives, he's faced with a scene he didn't want to see. The temple was completely destroyed. Players are wondering what that noise was in the middle of the night. The snotty boy knows it was the voice of his master, who must have done something grand. The rabbit suddenly appears beside him, startling him. Snotty boy whispers that the other people can't see him, but the rabbit tells him to stay calm and listen. They finish everything but should be good weapons on the ground. He advises using them and avoiding wolf meat because it causes stomach problems. After giving these tips, the rabbit takes off, leaving Snotty Boy without a chance to thank him. He whispers that he's grateful to the rabbit. The rabbit hears him, glances back briefly, then continues on his way. The rabbit, once a criminal and temple destroyer, had reached a day in his life when he received a thank you. A thanks from a dungeon player. They're now at the Dragon's Temple. The stone carving ability is at level 10 and Don received the achievement of Temple Destroyer with an unknown reward. Don obtained a new job by stealing an entire altar. Now he has 2 altars, and even Alpha is impressed by this feat. He asks where to start, and Alpha suggests sacrificing a marble. Don asks if he can use the enchantment system, and Alpha says he'll only get a portion. It was very heavy, and Don asks if it's enough to revive Ardia. Alpha says no, and the rabbit mentions that not all the vital force is there, just a small amount, but Alpha notes that it's enough to restore the temple, which is already a big deal. He positioned the sphere on top of the altar. He was ready to perform the sacrifice. A strong light illuminated the room. The sphere, once blue, turned golden yellow. The altar began to glow intensely, startling Don. The achievement popped up again, but there was no reward, and the rabbit was surprised to see that his status window was glitching. The rabbit grumbled after taking a few hits and walked away complaining. Strange letters began to appear on the screen. He earned the achievement of Temple Restorer, and as a reward, he now owns an altar. Both the rabbit and Alpha were shocked. The altar of death had now become an altar of life. Alpha told Don he should be happy about this. The rabbit said that with 2 altars, they could create a second temple, but Don doesn't see the advantage in that since they're always on the move. What he wants now is to use the enchantment system, and Alpha says it's possible, so he decides to finish restoring the temple. He uses the reset ability several times but wishes he could do it all with a single command. Alpha tells him that he needs to improve the ability further. Don continues his work of resetting the temple. After much effort, the temple was fully rebuilt. The rabbit wants them to have another barbecue soon. But Don still has work to do because the griffin might return to attack them. The golems are carrying some things to set up traps. Alpha says that if Don were a mage, it would be faster. Don asks if the temple was designed for mages, and Alpha replies that everything was done with slaves like him. They're now on a cliff trying to figure out how to reinforce the place. The rabbit begins to explain how things work. Reinforcements can be made with, and they could add whatever auctions they wanted. And the higher the level of enchantment, the more vital force is used. Don decides to enchant the arrow trap with penetration level 1 and paralysis level 1. He wants to test the effect of the enchantment. The arrows are fired toward a boar carcass. Apparently, they didn't hit the target. The rabbit says they did hit. Don goes to check what went wrong. The arrows were so strong that they weren't visible. That was incredibly powerful. This gave them a deep sense of relief because in that place, there's a monster yearning for revenge. A minor detail delayed its hunt with a bitter taste in its mouth. The griffin is climbing the cliff full of hatred, and it's furious with Don. It climbs with the determination of someone bent on causing chaos. It continues climbing until it reaches the top of the cliff at the top. The rabbit was already waiting for it, and he fires the enchanted arrows at the griffin. The powerful barrage hits it squarely. The force of the arrows was enough to make it lose altitude. They pierced its hide this time. But it's still alive. The rabbit is pleased because the enchanted trap was effective. The griffin continues to fall toward the ground. The griffin, using the last of its strength, clings to the cliff wall once again. It continues its ascent. This was the first time it had been wounded, and the poison from the arrows was slowly taking effect. Yet even all that wasn't enough to make it give up on its revenge. The beast had taken the situation personally, and was already considering drastic measures to settle the score. The rabbit, observing the griffin's determination, realized that he once felt the same way and apologized for what he was about to do, but a sadistic and discreet smile formed on his face. He poured boiling oil over the beast. Now there was a large circular staircase. Dalvin heard a noise but couldn't tell what it might be. The rabbit said he got it and saw it fall. Dalvin asked if it was finished. The rabbit wasn't sure but suggested that if it were still alive, the griffin would return flying, and they would take it down again. Dalvin complimented the rabbit's work and noted that the enchantments were quite effective, but something happened that shifted his attention. A large hole appeared in front of him. Alpha asked if he needed to go into the hole, and Dalvin said no. However, he found something inside at the bottom of the cave. There was a source of light and he felt he needed to check it out. Alpha urged him to ignore it, but Dalvin didn't listen. With his golems, he investigated where the passage led. He saw that the glow was coming from a small sphere. It was on the ground with nothing around it. Dalvin looked ahead and saw something unbelievable. It was the nest of the griffin that was trying to take him down. The griffin had woken up because its sleep was disturbed. Dalvin was annoyed because the rabbit had said he had dealt with it. The griffin reacted quickly, charging toward them and breaking the wall. Dalvin narrowly dodged and wondered if that creature was immortal. He noticed several arrows embedded in the griffin's belly. The rabbit was descending the stairs as fast as he could. He was ready to mock Doan, thinking he would be rewarded. He found the hole and looked down. Dalvin was down there in trouble. He dodged the griffin's attack again and ordered his golems to attack as well. The golems advanced toward the griffin to engage in combat. The griffin stood tall, but the golems managed to hold its legs. The rabbit couldn't believe what he was seeing and didn't understand why the griffin was still there. Doan gave him a few slaps, annoying that the rabbit hadn't done the job he was assigned. The rabbit said he saw the griffin fall and didn't think it had a nest in the mountain. One of the golems was split into 2 pieces, and the other was sliced from top to bottom. A third golem advanced to strike the beast. But the griffin, now furious, destroyed it with a single blow. The golems were destroyed, and the griffin was enraged. Doan had only one option left. The rabbit said that this was a creature from the 4th phase and that they couldn't do anything there. Doan looked at the rabbit seriously. The rabbit began cheering for the golems like a cheerleader. Doan asked Alpha if he could bring the traps through the portals, and Alpha said yes, asking if he wanted to bring the arrow trap there. Doan said there wasn't time but create a portal anyway. He entered the portal, and the rabbit thought he was being abandoned. The rabbit tried to herd the golems so they could escape as well. The griffin turned its attention to the rabbit, who was terrified. But Doan had just returned through the portal. He told the rabbit not to be afraid, and the rabbit tried to play it off, thinking that if he were wearing underwear it would be heavy now. Doan said he heard everything in the first fight with the griffin. He already thought about what to do with enemies whose abilities were not effective against the strength of the boar was only useful against weak enemies. He needed an offensive ability that would be effective against strong ones. No matter how much he thought about it, he didn't know how to solve it. That was until he gained a large amount of vital energy, the raw material for temple abilities. While holding the rabbit by the head, he said duck, and after that he sent fire. Various things started coming out of the portal he created in that place. He and the rabbit were lying on the ground, and above them, arrows were flying non-stop. They hit the griffin squarely. Its face and head were riddled with arrows. The rabbit didn't understand how they passed through the portal. Alpha says there is another portal in front of the traps and that, thinking about efficiency, a lot of vital energy was spent. But even if it's inefficient, the attack was extremely effective and well planned. After seeing the wounds on the griffin, who's sure it would work, that was the moment of his victory. The griffin agonizes over the wounds it just suffered, and it collapses in front of them, defeated. He achieved the Griffin Hunter title and now he will be as brave as an eagle. He finds that reward practically useless. He gained another achievement for using arrows and now his eyes want a target. He doesn't know what a unique achievement is and thinks the griffin was weak, but the rabbit says that the monsters in each phase are special. That is not an offensive skill and he wants to know how it works. A red dot is appearing on the wall. Dawn says that after picking up the bow he was seeing it now. The rabbit asks if he is still checking the skill, and the guy says he is now understanding it. The dot shows where the arrow will land because it was in a different place from where he aimed. The rabbit suggests that he shoots the arrow right away and he prepares to do so, tightening the bowstring, and he shoots the arrow using his skill. It hit the ground and deflected to the wall. The rabbit said he was terrible at that. The red dot was still on the arrow that was up high, still fell exactly on that red dot. The skill predicted where the arrow would land even though he was terrible if he trained. Could be very useful. He wants to see the rewards and asks if the rabbit did what he had asked. He plucked a bird but doesn't know why he asked for that. Their dinner that day would be roast chicken and even Alpha is surprised by this. Since the griffin has a different anatomy, the edible parts are the wings and hind legs. The other parts are complicated, so they were saved for emergencies. Even though it's seasoned, it must be hard to cook all that without the aid of an oven. Alpha says that with the solar stone, the fire will get hotter, and Darwin asks if those are the yellow stones. Alpha says they store the sun's brightness and are a valuable treasure. The guy didn't even imagine that would be useful. And it seems that solar energy works because plants are growing there. He steps on one of the plants. And soon it starts screaming very loudly, scaring him. The rabbit told him to be careful because that's a screaming plant that yells when stepped on, but he said they are tasty. Darwin asks how he knows that, and the rabbit ate some while looking for sesame. He wants to know if they stop screaming if purified, and Darwin notices they look like radishes. The rabbit starts smelling something delicious. The smooth griffin leg was ready to eat, much to the delight of the hungry rabbit. The two beat happily. The rabbit swears to follow his master forever, and Alpha felt left out. Time passed as special day arrived. Some stones are thrown to the ground. Darwin was standing before something. The day he was seeking had finally arrived after 2 long months. He had crossed the entire cliff. His stone carving skill is at its maximum now, and the rabbit says he completed that achievement after breaking an entire mountain, and he's already surprised that his boss continues mining. He wants to go down another mountain and leave this safe place. He told the rabbit not to slack off and to take the golems to check the surroundings. He placed the solar stone inside the place he had dug out. His new hideout was finally ready, and Alpha asks if he doesn't plan to decorate the temple in the same way. He thinks about decorating the entrance, and Alpha asks how he's going to hide that place when he leaves, and Darwin says he'll close the entrance with stones. The rabbit comes back terrified, saying they are in trouble. And he asks where the golems he took are. And that was exactly what he wanted to talk about. Listening to the rabbit, he couldn't believe what he had heard. They are running because the rabbit had found other players, but they attacked the golems as soon as they saw them. And it makes sense, anyone who saw them would think they were monsters. But if they were able to reach phase 4, it means they are very strong. He asked the rabbit that the golems would be okay, and he said they would certainly be annihilated. The participants, of course, not the golems in a nearby clearing. A fierce battle is taking place. A player summons his shield to protect himself, and the big gorilla smacks him hard. The gorilla used so much force that it broke its own hand. Another player doesn't know where the golem's core is, which should be in its chest. His golem's cores are scattered in random places. The players notice that another one is approaching. Darwin spotted the players and told the rabbit to hide for now. Darwin is happy that they aren't really there. He approaches them, offering his greetings. The players don't understand this at first because to them, it looked like he was fleeing in terror. One of them says there was another person being attacked by the golems. Darwin didn't understand why he thought that. And he finally realizes that they got everything wrong. He imagines they'll be upset if he says the golems are his, and the rabbit says he'll be lucky if they don't think he's a guide. But he will try to approach them anyway. The players are terrified and tell them that there are already too many golems there, and Darwin can't do much other than run away. He raises his finger in the air. The golems that were there pay attention to the gesture. They start moving immediately. The golems begin to run, following Darwin and abandoning the players. One of them noticed what was happening, and seeing that, he couldn't believe it. He imagined that Darwin did that on purpose to save them. There is a camp of huts in the forest. A player reports to another that they found other ruins, and he wants details about that. You follow the mysterious player to the mountains. And it's on the stone mountain, but he preferred not to enter there. The old man reflects because the hunting squad didn't find food and still found you ruins. They are hard to take down even with his skills. He said he should send the rookies there. The player said that was very dangerous, and the old man said that's why they will send the rookies. And he would take the opportunity to show the rookies who is in charge of that place. The player listens to those words with some apprehension. On the mountainside something happens. Dowan told his golems to stay there, and he closed the access to his hideout. The rabbit asks if they will be safe, and Dowan says he doesn't want to be misunderstood. The rabbit asks if he is going there because he heard the squirrel, and if he can really understand it. And he said yes, and asked the little squirrel again if it seen people there. Worry is the mother of all virtues, he said, and he built a tower there to use his mini-map, and the rabbit noticed that he builds much faster now. Looking closely at the map, he followed the direction pointed by the little squirrel, and they continued their journey there. A message says he left the dungeon and arrived in the Valley of Death, and that he had entered the rift. Dowan doesn't know what that means. He didn't understand the concept of a rift in that place. The rabbit teases him, saying he doesn't know what that is. After giving the rabbit a few slaps, he asks the Nodal to explain it to him. The more you advance through the stages, the more dungeons there are. In stage 4, there are 4 dungeons. Since they are not together, there are neutral zones between each one. And these spaces are called rifts. In other words, the space between dungeons is a rift. It's where players set up camps so they can do the dungeons more than once. Dowan has difficulty understanding because he never left the first stage. The rabbit says that thanks to this, there is a place there called a village. Maybe this is the place Squirrel mentioned, and by the explanation, it seems to be a safe zone. The rabbit was immediately surprised by something, and he jumped on Dowan to save him from something. The boss doesn't know what happened, and the rabbit says that humans are too stupid. The villages are safe zones. In the dungeon they are in, there is no such place. A strong stench rises. A bunny hat appeared in front of him. An undead begins to rise from the ground, and the name Valley of Death starts to make more sense. The little squirrel charges forward, starving, and Dowan warns that it will have a terrible stomach ache if it eats that. He uses the boar's strength to defend himself, and hits the skull with force. He didn't expect that to be so easy, but there were already other reanimated bodies there. But Dowan is not intimidated because he found one weak. Yet something makes him change his mind, and he begins to observe things more closely. In front of him now are many skeletons. The group charges toward the young man. The skeletons are determined to make him one of them. Dowan defends himself against one of them with his staff and prepares to strike it, saying that those numbers are nothing. The rout is already going all out as well, and he sliced through a group with his rabbit strikes. Dowan hadn't imagined that the rabbit was capable of doing it, and the rabbit asks his boss to watch what he can do. He destroys the skulls happily, expecting to receive more praise. And Dowan praises him earnestly because he realizes that the more he praises, the less he needs to fight. The rabbit is already very tired, and falling to the ground he says he's at his limit, and Dowan complains about his performance. He grabbed him by the ears and started running away from there. One of the skeletons prepares to throw a spear. It heads towards Dowan and almost hits his foot but lands on the ground. Another one also reached in and landed in front of his foot. The young man tripped over the spear and fell clumsily to the ground. He starts to get up from the ground not long after. The skeletons had already surrounded him. Meanwhile, something was happening in the Rift Village. The old man asks if the reconnaissance team had left, and noticed that the rookies are in high spirits. A young man is using his lightning skill, and with it, he takes down several skeletons at once, saving Dowan. He asked if the young man was okay since he was on a reconnaissance mission, and said there's a nearby village they could go to. Dowan immediately recognized his friend. He starts crying. Emotional Sung also recognized him right away in the Rift Village. A player asks if that's for real. The boy was crying but said that he had returned, and the young man asks if the one who had returned was Sung, and as he arrives at the village, he informs the others that Dowan is now with them. Another player gets emotional at what he's seeing, and starts shouting Dowan's name. The boy said the adult was crying more than he was. He asks if that was really his friend, and is happy that he is there. Other players observe the commotion and say that a friend had returned to them. He didn't expect to cry so much and asks why Dowan didn't cry, but he said he had already cried plenty with Sung. The old man approaches because he heard they have a new guest, and the other players point to where Dowan is. Sung greets the elderly man who arrived there, and said he found them on the reconnaissance mission. The rabbit starts thinking about the elder, and Dowan asks if he's important. He said no, but he heard some things about him. The elder approaches the newcomer to get to know him better. Dowan bows and introduces himself formally to him. The elder comes even closer, making him uncomfortable. There was a man in the dungeon, weak and cowardly, and they thought you would soon be done for, but he had an interesting skill called clarity. The first time it left him disappointed, but as he perfected it, the true potential of it was discovered. Inside a very dangerous dungeon, he could see the opponents and how they attacked. He could see the enemy's strength, this clarity, but he realized that before the last dungeon of level 4, he was nothing, and if he entered there, he would certainly die. Knowing this, he abandoned his team and fled. He left his past behind and built a house in the rift. The creator of the village, the elder of the village, he is chatting with the elder, and he looks intently at Doan. He is trying to identify Doan's weakness with his skill. He does his best to analyze the boy, who, without knowing what was happening, felt embarrassed for being watched by the old man. After a few awkward seconds, the old man said it was a pleasure to meet him. Then he said the boy was welcome and that he would show him around. However, the old man cannot tell if the boy is dangerous or not. Only his skills and survival ability can answer that. Perching his friend, he said that the old man was way too weird. Nonetheless, that impression was mutual, as the old man couldn't form an opinion about the boy either, finding him strange as well. Since they were together, the boy said he would go later and his friend could go ahead if that was the case. His friend went ahead, and the boy bid him farewell, hoping to see him again soon. The rabbit asked that he was happy to meet that person again, as it was an interesting scene to watch. It didn't take long for him to be properly trained, so he would avoid being so arrogant. But truth is, he needed to observe this village for a while longer. There were some barricades around it capable of keeping monsters out. However, the tents there were poorly made and of terrible quality. He was so intrigued by them, they even imagined it was intentional. But the rabbit said it wasn't. In fact, they probably didn't even have the proper materials there. Indeed, they didn't, and he wanted to know if the rabbit had found anything on the way there. The rabbit didn't see much, but emphasized that there were penalties for those who didn't reach the next stage in time. In the first phase, it was rats. In the fourth phase, it's the lack of food. If there's no food, how could there be materials? It makes perfect sense thinking about it. He concluded that these people were possibly starving. Someone said that the old man had asked for everyone to gather. Thus, the villagers gathered. Among them, he introduced John to everyone, which was embarrassing for the young man. He hopes this will make him reveal himself or give hints of his personality. Looking closely at him, he assumed that judging by the quality of his skin and the fullness of his cheeks, he wasn't only well-fed but must have food. Then the old man placed his hand on the boy's shoulder, who reacted shyly. Since he had joined the community, he had something to ask him. If he intended to stay, he would need to share the food he had. It wasn't necessary to get everything he had. But in the community, people share what they have, and John didn't think that was a bad idea. So he opened his inventory soon. The remaining meat from the griffin appeared, and he wanted to know if it was enough, which stirred up the others. They didn't know what was more surprising, the amount of meat or the fact that it was from a griffin. Seeing that, the old man's underwear instantly felt as heavy as an anvil. He couldn't believe that John had hunted the griffin. There was food right in front of them. Griffin, believe it or not, they celebrated because indeed food was scarce there. The old man wanted to know how he caught the griffin, and John said it was there, so he had to catch it the casual way. He recounted his feat, sparked admiration among the villagers. His friend was happy for John's achievement, as was the small boy who admired him even more now. Who didn't like it was the old man, who was envious and unloved. It was possible to see several wounds on the carcass. There was no way he could have done it all alone. He then asked if John had used a trap, and John confirmed it. After all, they saw the griffin fall from the sky. Had assumed that John must have been lucky to find the carcass, and now felt more at ease thinking that way. Soon, other people were thinking the same, and the envious old man felt happier because they stopped praising John. It would be terrible if someone capable of hunting a griffin were among them, as it could threaten his leadership. John's friend called for the old man. He said they were going to finish their reconnaissance shift now. That was what he wanted to hear, but he pretended to be surprised. The task was indeed important, but now, you can't do things alone, and his companion had only come to find him. He didn't want to appear as a bad person, and today he had only one task for him: to take a break with his friend. He did this just to boost his reputation as a good-natured old man. He accepted the villagers' cheer, and John found it strange, that's all. That old man's behavior was already bothering him. He realized he only did it to get attention, but his friend asked him not to get irritated. At least now, they will all be able to talk a little in that huge place. John didn't see anything huge there, and asked that his friend's talent is that small. It's not about talent. They help a lot there. In fact, he reminded them that his friend doesn't have a blanket, so he should sleep in her tent tonight. John was already completely fed up with the whole situation. He tried to take it easy because they're living there, they don't have basic things, and they lack sheets and furniture. The place is small and dirty, he can't stand another minute. His aura became threatening, and he asked if the nights are cold there. The fact of the case, he understood it's cold and activated his crafting mode. His friends are speechless now, but he says that from now on they can say goodbye to cold nights. Now the place warmed up, they want to know how he did that, but that's his ability. In fact, if he tried a little more, now they not only have beds but sofas, even a coffee table. That's not all, it's still too early to be surprised. John can do much more. It's proof for your health to drink mandrake tea before eating. The man cried, moved as he never imagined he'd drink such a tea. Meanwhile, the boy looked at his cup, intrigued. Then he told Jinsu that if the tea was too bitter, he should just add 2 more spoonfuls of that and it would taste better. Now the drink was sweetened, and the others wanted to taste it too. The sound of their joy filled the inside of the tent, and John watched them closely, happily. Memories are triggered by sensory experiences, and tasting something sweet after so much time in that hell. For his friends who were there, revisiting those memories is something good. It helped them forget the hardships of the dungeon. He remembered when he received a little gift from his student, because she was grateful to her teacher, who taught so well. He finally saw what he had received. The little girl had given him a lollipop. They were all completely moved. John knew it was happening because he felt it too. That's why he watched without saying a word. But one who couldn't take it anymore was the rabbit. He had no more patience for that nonsense, because one of mandrake's effects is to make the body excrete toxins in the form of tears. Now John was scared, as the rabbit had revealed himself. It didn't take long for a sword to be drawn, as well as a great battle axe. A small and deadly dagger. They told the guy not to try anything. Worried, they asked John to move away from him. The rabbit says it's a misunderstanding and desperately asks John to do something. But he blames the rabbit for undoing his invisibility. Now there's no way to fix the situation. The rabbit is on the ground in an extremely uncomfortable position, learning a lesson for being such a fool. They finally hear that the rabbit is now John's servant. Besides making objects using earth, the rabbit is his servant. They want to know how it all happened. So he started telling from the beginning, from the golems, the fight against the temple's protective statue, and the other things that let in there. After hearing everything, they were extremely surprised and moved by the sad parts in the story too. At the end, he put his hand on John's shoulder in brotherly way. He praised his friend's efforts and said he had done very well. Those words caught him off guard. He didn't want to get emotional, but he did. The man cried again and complained that the tea's effects take too long to wear off. Now out of strength, the rabbit said he was very sorry for bothering them and also regretted everything, but that his neck was about to snap any minute now. After some time, they took pity on him lying on the floor. He was thankful that at least it was warm and pleasant there. The boy was happy that John was fine and that the rabbit was his servant. Was a day to celebrate, but John said they hadn't seen everything yet. What was in front of them was John's special pork chops, and since the occasion called for it, he was even going to open his treasures. They definitely weren't expecting a soda there. That simple bottle made them completely ecstatic. The boy ate the pork like it was a deli seat, while the man ate the veracity of a fentanyl addict. And John's friends savored the drink. Even the rabbit was immersed in the flavor of the chops. It had been a long time since they had celebrated this much. The night passed happily for them. Stuff they thanked for the delicious food they had eaten. Praising John's food, the boy wants to know if this is also a skill granted by the temple. But he says that cooking is practice, and if the food was good, it's because he's good at it. Seeing that his friend had gotten up, he asked if he was going to the bathroom. But he was thinking about something and asked if they could also have that. John thought he was talking about skills, but that's not it. What he wants to know is if they can have the title of Dragon Disciples. John is surprised and asks if his friend really wants that title. Don Min speaks to him telepathically, saying he found something interesting. He asked if it was an item or a monster, and the others want to know who he's talking to. The rabbit said it's called Whisperin'. The boy wants to know if John knows how to cook. What was in front of them was definitely surprising. From the portal, John pulls out some things, but he said he likes trying new foods and apologized for getting distracted. Then went back to talking about becoming dragon disciples. Alpha asks if they also want that title. He wants to know if it's really possible because it would be very useful there in the dungeon. Alpha asks, and it's because of the skills. And indeed, he won't lie about that. With Whisper, they can avoid dangers, and with the portals, rescue those who need help. And he definitely doesn't want to be separated from his friends again. John, who is emotional, cried once again. That said, this is why he desires those skills. It makes all his friends emotional as well. John asked Alpha if it would be possible, but he said it wouldn't, but he is deeply moved by the moment, and Alpha said that when it was with Dom Min, that was the condition. That condition is indeed important, but there's a limit to how many people can accept it right now. At the current juncture, he can't increase the number of his disciples too much. This left him extremely disappointed. However, Alpha said there's still a possibility. The next morning, the day begins in the village. The villagers gather and are much happier. The old man looks at them, imagining that everyone must be there in front of the meat. He prepares himself, and his ham is a knife ready to be used. He performs some radical maneuvers with it to show off. Then he wields it firmly, as if it were a weapon. He made the first cut into the griffin's carcass, and several more as if he were already used to it. Indeed, he had skill for this kind of thing. Now there are several portions of meat properly cut. The smug old man had finished his work. Looking at the others, he said they should do this in order, besides showing gratitude to the one who contributed with this food. The villagers shout in joy, congratulating John. Even though he's old, that kind of performance is always effective. John saw his skill with the knife and wondered if he would be able to handle the griffin alone. But the rabbit said that skill is limited to carving carcasses and nothing more. Not to mention the knife is an enchanted item, with at least 3 enchantments. The skill must be in the knife and not in the old man. John remembered that when he tried to cut the meat, he had to use a lot of energy. Now he hopes to find a knife like that in the future. Even so, if that food isn't enough for everyone in the village, it's time for them to prepare for business. Smoke rises from the lit fires. The rabbit doesn't like that. It's as if they were celebrating, and besides, he hates the calm of that place. It brings some very large cues. The boy, for his part, handles a brush. They want to know if it's enough because it was so much that they wouldn't be able to consume it all in a lifetime. John wants to know from the rabbit how the others are doing, and he says there's not a single tent that isn't cooking. The boy finished and asked him to see his work, and John said it was very good. Looking at Hoyle, he wants to know he's ready, and jokingly says he is. Then they wish him good luck, but he warned them to keep their expectations in check. With that, it was time for John to begin. A large banner was set up announcing the sale of salt stones, which are on sale. The boy wants to know what Hoyle went to do. Well, it was obvious he went to throw bait to those people. Excellent bait. The long-haired one wants to know if everything will be okay. As Hoyle had never done business this way before, John is adamant that no sales skills are necessary because he asked him for only one thing. They say the meat is good, but the taste is bland. Still, it's good to eat meat after such a long time. Hoyle suddenly appears, agreeing that the meat is tasteless. Just a single pinch of salt, nothing too intense. The boy wants to know when it was that Hoyle put on his piece of meat, but the appearance is familiar, and he didn't imagine it would be that. Before the boy could ask if it would be enough, people were already asking Hoyle to sell the salt. A crowd runs towards him, and John is happy that they took the bait. With everyone gathered there, they want to know how he has so much salt available. Besides that, they don't know what to. Since money has no value there, maybe they should use food. The price is simple. 1 bowl of salt costs a second-hand enchanted item. Any enchanted item will do as payment for some. That's a price they cannot pay, but others are very interested in this exchange. The boy warned that it's not just any object, it must be enchanted. But everyone there knows how to get enchanted items, which can't be said about the salt in stage 4. Every player has at least 2 enchanted items they don't use, but they are valuable because they are hard to obtain. Salt is precious and the items are scarce. And everyone has the same doubt. They were nearly boiling from thinking too much. It just needed a small push for the reaction to happen. One of them acted rashly, which ended up being the trigger that was enough to make everyone more inclined to go along. It didn't take long for the salt sale to be a complete success in the village. Just as quickly as the commotion started, it spread throughout the village. The old man was perplexed to learn that salt was being sold. It's not possible that they have salt available too. Then he watches everyone gathering to buy it, saw Zhang collecting enchanted equipment. He said that Zhang had a talent for surprising people. The old man said he would get some salt. Zhang said all he needed to do was give him an item, But the old man disagreed. His intention was to take all the salt that was there. They thought the old man intended to buy all the salt. But he said that salt is food too, and that he would manage this resource better, and that the weapons he was receiving were too valuable. Zhang says he can't do that, even though the old man is the leader, so he decided he would buy it all at market price, as he has many pieces of equipment that are completely useless. The important thing wasn't the salt, but the reputation he could gain from it. Zhang says buying all the salt will be laborious, but he accepts anyway. That made him question the old man's seriousness in any case. That clown must be loaded with money. Zhang makes a scene and isn't sure if the old man can pay for all the salt he has. But the old man tells him not to worry. He says he's concerned that it might be a burden for his old back. The old man says he's a man of his word and won't go back on his offer. And he was adamant in saying that he would buy everything. It wasn't a bluff. He used his ability to calculate the amount of salt and compared it to the number of items, but there was something his ability couldn't foresee, and Zhang said he would get the rest. The old man had to hide a heart attack when he asked what the rest was. Zhang apologizes for taking too long. Then he showed them a statue made entirely of salt. Now the old man can't believe that all of that is salt. Zhang says that's pure salt, and if he wants, he can taste it. The question remains if the old man will be able to keep his promise with all that salt there. Otherwise, it would be terrible for his reputation. The old man's face couldn't hide his frustration and anger. People comment that the old man was caught off guard. He's sweating cold as he doesn't know what to do and can't even hide that his underwear is already soiled. Time passed in the camp. The night had been productive for Zhang. Alpha praises him, as for the first time, he had acted like the owner of the temple. Even though they are low-level equipment, it was a huge quantity obtained just from salt. Almost 60 of what was there belonged to the old man. None of them seemed to be very useful. The long-haired man asked his friend to take a closer look at those gloves. They could be useful for handling hot traps, but Zhang thought of using them in the kitchen. Most of the items were like that pair of gloves, useless. The ones that had the potential to be more useful had their durability compromised, and if it wasn't compromised, the item was certainly of no practical use. By saying they would accept anything, they only received junk from people. Zhang says they can't be blamed because they can't give up items that protect their lives, not to mention that the purpose of the sale was to achieve a greater goal. They needed to recruit more apostles for the temple. He gathered everything necessary, and now it was up to Alpha to do his part. Before moving on, Alpha has something to say to him, and Zhang asks if he needs more equipment. Actually, he needs to explain how to use that equipment. Zhang was curious and wants to know if Alpha can restore their durability. But that's not what he wants to talk about. When an object becomes a sacrifice, enchantment is imprinted and he can enchant another object with the same ability. The long-haired one realized they could make more enchanted objects, and Alpha praised his cleverness. However, these are all secondary actions. He says this doesn't make much sense. He can't believe Zhang is going to build a temple there. The conditions are the objects, the altar, and the people. The rabbit doesn't even know when the altar appeared there. These are the criteria for having another temple, and they need more to be able to have more apostles. The problem is that soon the others would find out and the old man could become a nuisance. But Zhang isn't going to build a temple there. So they want to know where he's going to do it. The night continues in their village. Looking at the stairs to the underground, he can no longer see the end of the tunnel. Even in that void area, he could never predict the dangers that exist underground. Dubois told him to stop daydreaming and come help them because he knows he's only pretending to be concerned to avoid the hard work. He said his hands are too big, and the long-haired one asked to take a look at them. Looking at them, he said the task would be easy for him. Just rub your hands and the hulls will come off the grains. That's how you make rice. He wanted to know how the long-haired one knew this, but he learned it from Zhang. In fact, that work was therapeutic for him, almost like meditation. Hearing that, you could only imagine that the long-haired one was a weird guy too. The rabbit says he knows how he feels. Zhang is complicated, and when he starts digging, only God knows what he'll do from down below. He scolded the rabbit, who didn't expect to be overheard by his boss. Faced with that huge rock, he's wondering if he should use it or not. The equipment he got with the salt, and he's going to enchant it with even more things. His strikes on the rock are now powerful. His stone-breaking ability had two important steps. He needed to place the spike in a spot and hit it with a hammer, two necessary steps when using the two tools. But using the pickaxe, he became even more efficient after a lot of work. He sighed in relief. There was a lot of space now, and he thinks he overdid it because he got excited. His friends say they're done with the rice even though he's far away. He didn't hear them well, maybe because it's this artificial cave. So he asked them to come down and for one of them to cook the food. The man stayed to cook and asked his friends to be cautious. The long-haired one was already surprised when Zhang made the furniture, and now he's even more impressed with everything arriving at the temple hall. He came across something even more incredible. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. It was a large plantation there, and he thought the wheat Zhang had given them was all he had. The truth is, he has a lot in his inventory, and he couldn't leave the ground uncovered, as it would be a waste of space. Since they're there, they want to know how they can help. He and the long-haired one will harvest the right grains, and the boy will protect them, as there might be skeletons around. The long-haired one didn't expect his friend to be afraid of skeletons. It's not fear he feels, he just doesn't want them near his precious wheat, so he started harvesting the grains. The long-haired one was also helping with the harvest. As for the boy, he was alert and focused on protecting the perimeter. Zhang looked to the side for a moment. His other friend was there along with the rabbit. In his hands was a large pot, filled with food. There was a lot of cooked rice inside, and it smelled good. That made those working very happy. Zhang blew on the rice to cool it down. The other two were also very enthusiastic. Now they had everything, happy people, a large amount of sacrifice material as well as the area for the temple. All the preparations have been completed. The boy is very happy with everything they did there. The man on the other hand said dust got in his eyes, but the truth is that he cries easily. The long-haired one, besides being happy, is proud of Zhang's abilities. Being the only sensible one there, the rabbit wonders why he's feeling a colossal sense of second-hand embarrassment. Zhang established that as the second temple of Ardea. Immediately, a great and intense light emanated from the altar. Alpha suggested activating the temple's defenses to prevent unwanted intrusions, but Zhang doesn't know who could invade them. Still, he installed one as a precaution, and the rabbit was surprised to hear that. Zhang pointed to where the trap was, but all the rabbit saw was rice in the middle of the field. There's a pit, the plants hide it well, and it will be quite effective against the unsuspecting and distracted. The rabbit found it inefficient and useless, but Zhang tries to reinforce that his trap is good to the rabbit. His boss wants to replant the rice as soon as the trap resets. Zhang doesn't know whether to leave it as is, or make more improvements. Alpha says he can appoint a manager for the second temple. The rabbit thought this would be his moment to shine once again. Zhang looked at him and asked why he was acting so smug. He wants to appoint Sung, the long-haired guy, as the manager of that temple. The young man ended up surprised, and the rabbit furious, but Alpha said that wouldn't be possible. The rabbit said a manager needs to have experience, and Zhang said that if a rabbit can do it, anyone is qualified. But he is better than the other rabbits, and the long-haired guy is just normal. Alpha says it's almost like that. A manager needs to transcend their peers. That's why most managers are animals, and the more saying he's the only capable one among them and wants to be a manager. Zhang is uncomfortable giving him more power, but he needs more apostles. Since it's his only option, the rabbit was named the manager of the second temple as well. He feels the power in his body now. He's a transcendental rabbit. But to them, he's just a talking rabbit. He said now he can have a name too, to his boss' surprise. After that, he was finally ready to have a name of his own, so he asked his boss to name him with a noble and powerful name. Seeing his name, he asked his boss if it wasn't a mistake. The name you expect to be something noble is just rabbit. Zhang says it's better than not having a name, and he is a rabbit. After all, this made him furious, as in the end, nothing had changed in his life. Thus, both Sung and Jin were accepted as disciples of the Dragon Temple. This granted them more skills. They can use the whisper to talk among themselves, as if it were a virtual conversation. However, the number of apostles has a limit. Hoyle preferred the other two as apostles because they have more combat experience. Thus, a long search for apostles had come to an end. But in the village, there was someone who couldn't sleep. The old man taps his fingers impatiently. He's sitting on his throne, thinking. He doesn't quite know what he's feeling, but he thinks it's anxiety. From his experience, he assumes his life is in danger. Maybe the griffin meat was poisoned, but it tasted too good for that. Perhaps it was the salt, but if it were, it wouldn't be salty. He can't imagine any more possibilities. He used his ability on himself to discover what was bothering him. The answer he found was Zhang. Two young men are talking about what they need to do to kill skeletons. It was his first time on guard duty, and he had no field experience. This made his partner worried because, alongside a rookie, he's also in danger, but there's a special sign every time they appear. A tombstone sprouts from the ground. That's the sign they're coming. He can't say why, but whenever it appears, they need to react quickly. Even if you break their limbs and spell, they won't die because they're already dead, thus they're at a great disadvantage. They cannot be underestimated. The defense strategy is to find the tombstone and destroy it. If he didn't know this, he'd be in trouble, and now he wants to know what the tombstones look like. Then the young man points to one that just appeared. Now he realizes what's happening. He's terrified of him because there are so many. He then told the other to go inform the old man about what's happening. From the underground, they hear movement and assume something must be going on. The long-haired guy wants to go there because he has a bad feeling about it. The old man orders the builders to reinforce the barriers and the warriors to prepare for battle. No wonder he was feeling anxious, but he doesn't know why these skeletons are bigger. His ability tells him there's no option this time. They will need to fight. Even though he's old, there are things he must protect. Like his precious village where he lives, he shouts for everyone to protect the town. The skeletons advance on the village in hordes. But the player's barricade has already been formed, ready to defend. The first of them charges at the hostile mass, destroying the first skeleton with ease. Near him, one of the skeletons prepares to attack. But there is another player ready to fight as well. Thus, the skeleton has its chest pierced by his weapon. The others begin to shout in unison, ready for war. The session of dismembering skeletons begins. They are crushed and dismembered without mercy. One of them prepares his spear to be thrown and hit the bald head of one of them. Even though they are only bones, the battle is dangerous. From above, the old man watches the battlefield. This is never a pleasant sight to witness. To the battle's end, the gravestones need to be destroyed, but given the formation of the battle, it's impossible to reach the gravestones. It doesn't take long for exhaustion to show among them. Now the player is completely unarmed. With limited physical strength and stamina, the humans are at a disadvantage because the dead never get tired. The chance of victory is becoming more and more scarce. The thought of that possibility makes the old man smile. It doesn't matter if they have a chance or not. That particular situation is important. With one strike, he destroys a skeleton that was nearby. Resisting is their only chance to survive one more day. He looks to the side, watching the warriors. One of them is already exhausted as there are many skeletons looking to the other side. He notices the same thing. The girl is also very tired from fighting so much. A prolonged battle, they have no chance of victory in this context. The more time passes, they can only feel one thing. And that thing is a brutal and intense fear. When someone is scared, the body trembles and moving becomes much harder, making it difficult for them to show their potential. The old man soon noticed the agitation of the village residents. To overcome that difficulty, he needs to raise everyone's morale. He took a deep breath to shout. He called all the village residents from the void. Some heard the old man's voice in the middle of the battle. The battle is fierce, and some are already thinking that victory is impossible. But they should think carefully about this. About all the hardships they faced, the courage and perseverance that brought them here, as well as all the good times they had together. That's the reason they have to keep living. Even those who were scared stopped being afraid, and the tired ones became more motivated. They need to survive so they can return one day to the world they belong to and escape this hell. Surviving the dungeon, that was the routine of many. Their routine can make dreams seem distant, but remembering the goal can give strength to the weary. They need to return home. The old man's speech encouraged them by reminding them they can get out of there. He thought they wouldn't win, but he remembered that losing is not an auction. Determined not to die there, the fight intensified. They were clearly more motivated. And the old man believes that a miracle could happen now. Zhang said that was a heartfelt speech. The old man looked back, surprised by the boy, because the true miracle had just arrived. That is definitely a cliché, one of the most mediocre ones. For the rabbit, it would be embarrassing, but there's no better word to describe them now. They are heroes. The tired fighters looked on admiration, those lightning bolts descending with the blades. Definitely a powerful and fierce strike. Not even the old man imagined the long-haired one was that strong. That sword that controls lightning seems to be a formidable weapon, but the boy says it's not just the weapon that matters, and asked him to watch more closely what he would do next. He closed his eyes while holding his bow. When he opened them, a yellow energy enveloped his arrow. What really makes the difference is the skill. A woman said the child was incredible, which made the child annoyed. He quickly snapped back to reality, noticing Hoyle was missing. One of the fighters had been injured by one of the skeletons. The strike made him drop his weapon to the ground. Hoyle says it's not cool that a dead man wants to take the life of the living and walk towards the skeleton full of anger. The monster hesitated for a moment. However, it drove its dagger into his stomach. That wasn't what he was expecting. A skeleton had caught him off guard. The monster smiled at its feet, thinking it was tough. But Hoyle was just playing around with a single blow. He turned the skeleton into a big jigsaw puzzle. The boy doesn't know how Hoyle is still alive as he was stabbed. Hoyle's skill is replay excellent for a tank like him. Seeing all of this, the old man swore that he was just a useless novice. Not to mention Son, who by himself is an enormous destructive force. Meanwhile, Jean can deal damage from a distance with his bow. And there's also the physical resilience of the old man. Now the elder realizes that the three of them together are an unstoppable force. They definitely make a well-prepared and balanced team. Zhang doesn't understand why they're fighting outside when they could use the fence to their advantage. But the old man says that was the best option. It's hard to find good quality wood around here. The barricade may look strong, but it wouldn't hold much. Not to mention there are many who fight in close combat, so they need to be in front of the fence. Zhang said the fence is useless then, but the old man insisted it still has a purpose. With that many enemies, the fence reduces the directions from which attacks can come. It may be hard for a beginner to understand, but Zhang interrupted him saying it's too complicated. It's not simple enough. Hearing this, the old man was outraged. If that's the problem, then they need a better fence. He asked if the skeletons are capable of jumping, and the old man says they only march forward. Curious, he wants to know what Zhang is going to do, but before he could get his answer, he was truly surprised. Zhang was building a wall for the village. The skeletons quickly tried to bring the structure down. They could try as much as they wanted, but they wouldn't be able to do anything. Now there's only one more thing to do. Through a whisper, he wants to know if Song and Jean can hear him. Immediately, they confirm they can hear him. He's going to separate the people from the monsters and need their help. Song should come to him while the boys should stay with the old man. But he doesn't know how to find him among so many people. All he had to do was look around, as a mark had been made on the ground. Song looked up, impressed. Jean was also impressed by what he saw. The old man wondered if this was really happening. Meanwhile, the elder was speechless, thinking Zhang might be a god. There was a massive tower in the middle of the battle. From up there, he activated his minimap. There really were many skeletons, and the blue dots must be his new apostles. The rabbit arrived there, exhausted, and Zhang said he was a mediocre manager, but it was hard to get there without being killed. It seems the Almighty One has a guilty conscience, and Zhang wants to know what he means by that. But it's all his fault. Although Zhang didn't expect it to cause all of this, he didn't expect the temple to attract so much. And the rabbit wants to know what the connection between the temple and the skeletons is. Alpha says the undead are drawn to the life energy of the temple, and Zhang wants to know if he knew this would happen. Like a lightning bolt, Song climbed up the side of the tower. When he got there, Zhang praised his agility building that tower so fast. He never stopped being impressed. Had already told the other two while heading there. By separating the people from the monsters, he wanted to know if they would use the wall he had just built. That's the plan. But he needs their help, so they quickly talked things over after the conversation. Sinem understood the plan. Zhang spoke to Jean, who still hadn't found the old man. He told him to prepare to close his eyes. Song stood with arms wide open at the top of the tower. Having fought them, he knows it would be difficult for even him to handle them all. Apprehensive, he wants to know if Zhang is sure he can win. Confident, Zhang said yes, and that soon he would see his friend. More at ease, Sinem only asked him to hurry, because he could be caught by it too. Zhang wants him to make a signal with his lightning, to use all his strength, creating something similar to a beacon. It's possible to do, but Song asked if it wouldn't be a waste of energy. It wouldn't be, because that way he would be able to get everyone's attention. In the elder's speech, he shouted. Not everyone heard him, but up there, Song's light would be seen by everyone without exception. He needs Song's help to save the people down below. That's the only way to save everyone in the village. This selflessness makes the long-haired one happy. He's been here for a while now and has worked hard to stay with his friends. But in unfavorable and complicated situations, he was confronted with harsh realities. They thought he wasn't capable of doing anything more. Seeing that Zhang wants to save everyone is motivating. And if that's Zhang's intention, they no longer have anything left to wait for. Jean noticed his hair starting to lift from the static electricity. The signal is coming, and they need to be ready. Azura is already in position. Then Song uses his lightning ability. A massive wave of electrical energy descends from the sky, from where he stands. Not only the noise, but a great luminous signal appears in the sky. Below, people realize what has happened. Even those who had their backs to the tower noticed the lightning. A beautiful luminous signal cut through the night sky. For those guarding the village, the flash caught everyone's attention. They stay focused on it for a short period of time. Then Song shouted, ordering them to head to the wall near the fence. They wonder if this is the rookie, while others want to know where that wall came from. Song says once again for everyone to go inside the wall, as he's going to end it all. Not everyone understands, but some heard it clearly. Realizing he must have a plan, they begin to move. Soon they start bringing the wounded inside. Song is exhausted after having done all that. Now it was Zhang's turn to execute his part of the plan. He's already down below, running with the other two. The old man noticed the skeletons are slower. Maybe the lightning scared them. Whether that's the case or not, Zhang is grateful for what his friend did. Jean wants to know what they are going to do now. The first thing is to see if everyone is safe inside, but doing that will be very hard. Jean realizes it wasn't a bluff. Zhang really cares about other people, but Zhang corrects him, saying this isn't a heroic narrative now. Everyone there owes him one. Jean didn't expect to hear that. Zhang is happy that everyone there owes him their precious lives. Once this battle is over, he's gonna get some good equipment from them. Doing all that took more effort than he imagined. He's collapsed on the ground, drained of energy. Song isn't sure if he passed out, but he knows for sure he overdid it. Jean is running in a panic, calling for Song. He reaches the top of the tower terrified. Since Song didn't come down, he was worried about him. He got carried away and used too much force, which made him black out for a few seconds. Finally, he remembers the whole situation. He wants to know what happened to Zhang and if the village is safe. Jean asked him to calm down a bit. Now he needed to listen carefully. At first he didn't understand, but it was possible to hear a sound. Zhang's name is being shouted in unison. Song asks if that's really what he's hearing, and Jean says he should go see it too. Looking down, he lets out an honest laugh. Zhang really hasn't stopped surprising him. The villagers are celebrating. Everyone is shouting the name of the one who is crucial in saving them. There isn't a single person who isn't happy with him. The rabbit sees all of it and says none of this would happen if they knew him like he does. Zhang tells him to shut up and threatens never to give him meat again. He could really be evil sometimes, and Zhang told his lovely manager to give a smile. He told the others to enjoy the victory while it lasts. The old man arrives at the tower, complaining that it's too high to climb. From above, he can see people surrounding Zhang's elephant. The old man had to climb up because he was already feeling ashamed. Zhang is now a celebrity. The people are going to uproar over him. Looking down from the top, Song was also happy with the result. Besides being incredible, there was even a golem to use. In fact, even though it looks different, that's definitely a golem. Song wants to know what happened since he was unconscious. The old man isn't good with words and doesn't know how to begin describing it. Jean got irritated and said he would explain how everything happened. They thought the wall would only serve to protect the people. They were with it, checking if anyone was still outside. After making sure everyone was safe, Jean thought they would finally rest a bit. But that's not what happened. Zhang prepared to use his skill. He used the strength of the horned bull. It was really something incredible to witness firsthand. He started positioning bricks he had in his inventory. Everything seemed too simple to execute. He used basic movements but achieved formidable results. Zhang was completely focused and determined. The villagers ended up witnessing everything. Besides giving them meat, there was also all that salt. This guy who is helping them now. There is only one word to define him. He is simply incredible. But his plan didn't end with just the wall, and he asked the rabbit where he installed what he had requested. He told him to look at the map because he placed it in the planned spot and it was very hard to do it without being seen. Thus, he praised his manager's work. He couldn't join the battle earlier because he might hurt someone. With the field clear, he called his golems to the battle. Soon, they began emerging from the portal. The sight of them left people speechless. There was no resistance the skeletons could offer now. Some now understand that Zhang was indeed the one responsible for saving the village. From afar, the old man observes him. The situation for him is not looking good. The villagers were already on Zhang's side. And if the old man won the survive in the dungeon, he couldn't oppose him. Zhang from above spotted the old man. The will to live is truly a peculiar motivation. In a loud voice and smiling, he said that Zhang had done an excellent job. In the village, the day finally breaks through the streets. He hears some murmurs. As he passes by, people ask if he slept well or inform others that Zhang is passing by. Perhaps due to the hardships of the previous day, but everyone seems much friendlier now. The battle is the topic of the moment among them despite Sung's feats. They can't stop talking about Zhang. The rabbit says it's all his fault, but at least everyone is safe and alive. He just hopes Sung doesn't blame himself too much. But the rabbit says, unlike certain people, Sung has a conscience. Although he was sensible, he received a few knocks on the head. Alpha wants to know when he's going to collect the equipment, but Zhang wants to know what he's talking about. As skeletons have equipment that can be used as sacrifices, and Zhang didn't imagine that even broken items would be useful. There's little vital energy in them, but it can still be used if that's the case. He would find out soon. The rabbit wants to know where he's headed now, but at that exact moment, the boy is at a loss for words. He wonders why the old man is bowing before him. The old man doesn't call him by name, but instead addresses him as Your Excellency. All this formality made him uncomfortable. Thanks to him, they now have a sturdy wall, but the situation in the village had changed greatly. Zhang doesn't know what he's talking about. Since yesterday, there have been many skeletons outside, making it very dangerous to leave. To be honest, they are completely isolated now. Thus, their first problem is how to get food. Originally, they would explore the outside, but with all these skeletons, it's become much more difficult. The rabbit asks what the old man wants, and automatically, the old man gets the biggest fright of his life. But the rabbit says it's alright. There's no one here, and Zhang told him to stop doing that kind of thing. The old man can't understand what Zhang is doing. There isn't a single person here who doesn't know who the rabbit is, as he plays a key role in the first memories of this hateful place. It seems they are companions and that Zhang is the leader. Looking at the old man, Zhang realized he had something to ask, and he was ready to listen. After looking at the wall, the old man had an idea. He asked if it would be possible to build a bridge. If there were a bridge as high as the wall, the skeletons wouldn't be able to reach anyone. With a safe route it could lead to. The rabbit said that the old man still knows how to think, because his idea isn't bad. Zhang wants to know the distance from a village to the nearest dungeon, and it's approximately 3 times the village's perimeter. Thinking about it, he concluded there should be no problem building a bridge, but he has no intention of doing it for free. He suggested they go outside to make an estimate, which surprised the old man. Outside, some were startled by the rabbit, but the old man said he was Zhang's companion after the last night. Not even walking with the rabbit negatively impacted Zhang's reputation. The villagers seemed to have blind faith in him from now on. That wall is indeed very solid and well observing. Some wondered if the rabbit was really his companion. Zhang said that these were the precious items he had accumulated so far. All that dirt he had collected with his own hands, to the old man's surprise. His life in a dungeon is all about building things. Finally, the old man seems to understand more about him. He didn't imagine he had gone through so much difficulty. But Zhang says it's alright. Eager to get started, Zhang wanted to make an estimate for the bridge. Since he was going to use his items, he would like to receive something in return. Starting with the equipment left behind by the skeletons, this proposal left the old man speechless. Since the golems did almost all the work, he sees no problem with it. With that decided, there's no time to lose, and it's time to start collecting as help was needed. The old man explained the situation to the volunteers. Rumors about the bridge construction soon spread. A direct route would indeed be very good for them. If they perish in that purple land, it will become skeletons too. The rabbit said that the body would immediately rot, and even a blade stuck in the ground would rust quickly. That land is capable of corroding and eroding everything. The old man asks if this is a problem, but Zhang is interested in that land. Since the wall is made of earth, it's normal. He wants to know if it's a good idea to build another wall on top of that one. To the old man, they should check the soil before making the bridge.